up, everybody? Welcome back to the Resleevables Urza Saga Edition. I'm your host, Cedric Phillips, at Cedric A. Phillips on all the things. I am joined by Patrick Sullivan at Basic Mountain on Twitter. Patrick, we have gone through the mud.
Oh, yeah.
We have been through plenty of good sets, more bad sets at the beginning of Magic's history. We went through a joke set with Unglued, and now we are here. One could argue, I think, maybe Magic's most powerful set of all time, or one of?
One of.
Okay.
It's really hard to compete with Alpha.
Yeah, it is.
But if you set that aside, because that's kind of cheating, right? Mox is a Black Lotus, the original dual lands, all that.
Yeah.
I can't think of a set that has both a higher ceiling and as much depth. It's not just that there's a handful of completely cracked cards, though there are. It's that the 50th best card in the set is still absurd.
That is true. That much I can promise you is true. After doing the research and combing through the 350 cards, they just said, F it.
Oh, yeah.
They just... For those of you who are like new to Magic-ish, and like you remember, is it Thrones of Eldraine? Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
The first Eldraine set? Yeah. And it was just like, what's going on here? We got this food mechanic, we got Oko, we got Wicked Wolf, we got Gilded Goose, we got like all this stuff going on. All these cards are super powerful. Did they even test this set? That's nothing. Nothing compared to what's going on here.
Turn one kills in standard.
Oh, yeah.
Is what's going on here.
Oh, yeah. Now, go ahead.
This was still kind of during my self-imposed exile from Stronghold to Saga.
Yeah.
But as a player who, even if I wasn't playing in big tournaments, I guess I would self-identify as competitive.
Okay.
I go to a local shop, try to, play with real decks against people for some form of stakes. So you have this, low point that we've talked a lot about on the show of this Fallen Empires, Homelands, Chronicles, even I would throw Ice Age in there, era of the cards are so unappealing. It's a bunch of reprints. It's stuff that's worse than cards in Alpha, just really, really boring. We're just playing with the same cards over and over again.
Yep.
And then we hit Alliances and Mirage, and there's some real stuff going on here. Not that it's competing in power level with Alpha, but there's new dimensions. So stuff is stronger in ways that it hasn't been before.
Yeah.
And then you get to Wrath Cycle, Tempest, Stronghold, Nexus, which is just this experience again of, there's all these very, very quick combo kills and lands that tap for 2 mana and all the stuff going on. We hit a point here where this is not even fun for the competitive player anymore. That's just true. I think where can you, because part of what's fun about Magic is this feeling of, well, what could the next step be? Where do we go from here? Could something be added to the format? Well, there's a standard rotation. What will the new decks look like?
Yeah.
And this set is the beginning of, if this is what it looks like going forward, the game cannot survive this level of power.
Yep.
Turn one kills in standard. That's happening a lot here.
Can you imagine just that world? I can't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. But a lot of players got to live it. He didn't. I didn't. I was too young, not really playing in any meaningful competitive way at the time. But I do know a lot of these cards because, I don't know if my dad bought me boosters with this set really, but like I've seen all of these cards in action and everything. I've played with them in like vintage cubes and stuff like that, but I really wasn't playing standard at the time or again, competitively in any meaningful way. But they did jog a lot of fun memories for me. I hope they jog a lot of fun memories potentially for you, viewer at home. And for those of you who were not around during this time, wondering what all the hoopla is all about, well, guess what? You're about to find out. And we are going to introduce this wild set that is Urza Saga with the facts right after this. All right, everybody. We are here for the facts of Urza Saga. But before we begin, we of course have to give a shout out to our wonderful sponsors, Tales of Adventure.
You can head over to toamagic.com and check out a selection of over 77,000 SKUs in stock, including 80 pieces of the Power 9, every single revised dual land, and singles of all shapes and sizes and every format that Magic has to offer. Every order placed with Tales of Adventure comes with free tracked shipping. UPS next day and 2-day shipping is offered for orders placed before 8 a.m., and Tales of Adventure has completed over 1 million orders lifetime, so you know you'll be in good hands with Michael Caffrey and his staff. If you'll be attending an event that Tales of Adventure will be at, when you're checking out, you can select the event pickup option, so you can simply pick up the cards you've ordered right at the event that you'll be at. You can find a list of events that Tales of Adventure will be attending right on their homepage, toamagic.com. Lastly, when checking out, be sure to use promo code Resleevables to get 5% off your entire order. Tales of Adventure Eternal lives here.
Alrighty. Time to dive into one of the strongest Magic sets of all time, Urza Saga, which is the 15th Magic the Gathering expansion. It was released on October 12th, 1998 in paper, because there's an online date coming here in just a second. But first, we must talk about the pre-release, which was September 26th, 1998. And Urza Saga pre-release card was...
Lightning Dragon in foil.
Yes, in foil. So if you were with us for the past couple episodes, pre-release cards started happening in Wrath Cycle, and they had like little stamps with dates on them, but the cards weren't fully in foil. This is the first time a card was released in foil. And I gotta say, Lightning Dragon, one of my favorite pieces of Magic artwork.
Even setting aside that this is a foil and that's just cool on its own.
Yes.
This is the first pre-release promo that's not a joke.
Yep.
The ones before are just random rares that look like commons.
Yeah,
basically.
they're just bad.
This is an appealing, for the standards of the time, an appealing design that has finally one of the set mechanics on it.
Yeah, you beat me to it.
Finally.
Yeah. Echo on the card.
It's there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now I know this from this set. Oh, what is Echo? Oh, it's this new thing. Maybe for some unspeakable reason, I like this. Let me go find other cards that have it. Great. Good.
I liked Echo when I was a kid.
I did too. I got some stories about that.
Yeah, I liked Echo. As far as the online release on Magic Online for Urza Saga, that was on March 29th, 2010, per my sleuthing. Let's talk about who designed this set. It was led by Mike Elliott, Richard Garfield, Bill Rose, and Mark Rosewater were the design team. The development team, also led by Mike Elliott. Then there's William Jokic, Bill Rose, Mark Rosewater, Henry Stern, and Beth Morsund. And the art direction is once again done by Ron Spears. Next up is the card count, which is 350 black bordered cards. We've got 110 rares, 110 uncommons, 110 commons, and 20 beautiful basic lands. Now, let's talk about the expansion symbol, which is a set of gears highlighting the artifact theme of the set and is meant to symbolize Urza's experiments in finding a way we must defeat Phyrexia.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I do like that there's sort of a technology or steampunk kind of vibe to the expansion symbols across the block.
Yeah, I like that.
I think the gears on their own tell a pretty good story. And then when you see the block together, it's okay. There's a coherent theme.
Yeah, Legacy's got the hammer and then, what is it, a beaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, Beaker and Destiny.
That's right.
I don't know much about Urza's Destiny. I'm actually looking forward to researching that set for this show. Now, I found a note here that R&D originally envisioned Urza's Saga and the Urza block to be centered on an enchantment theme, even though this set is more of like an artifact theme. So that's like a little surprising, I guess. But Urza, the big deal about Urza is like, this great artificer, and the creative team already decided that, because Urza is this ultimate artifact badass, we should probably have the set be based around artifacts and the block be based around artifacts.
Well, Mark Rosewater has gone on the record saying that Urza Saga is an enchantment set. Okay. And I think the experience that you're describing is very common.
Okay.
Which is just, how can that really be true?
Yeah.
Because your association with that block is how busted the artifacts are.
Absolutely.
But the artifacts themselves really don't have any sort of coherent design or a theme other than being busted. That's the only thing that's going on here.
Okay.
To the extent that there's structure in the set, it is with the enchantments, and we'll get into that later in the show.
Yep.
There's a bunch of different cycles and executions and things transforming into creatures. In that sense, it is an enchantment matter set more than an artifact matter set.
True.
But at the end of the day, your experience is going to be informed by sitting down and playing the games. And the enchantment stuff is so much weaker compared to the artifact stuff. The enchantment stuff in this set really doesn't even hold up in present day Magic. It's not that it was drowned out by how busted Urza's Saga specifically was for artifacts. It's not even that good in a 2024 sense.
Yeah, not really.
So
Not really.
Yes, in terms of the structure of the set, I would describe it as enchantment matters, but your reaction is very common. And that is part of the experience too, which is a lesson about the set. It's not just about what you do, but like what are the things you actually want to highlight and make show up in games for whatever reason. And on that line, I think the enchantment matter stuff here really falls flat.
You are right insofar as a lot of the cycles are enchantments.
Yeah.
That's actually really, really true. So I can understand the disconnect where it feels like an artifact set, but really, once we get to the cycles, you'll learn that there's a boatload of enchantments.
You can print a lot of enchantments, but if you also print Tolarian Academy, it is going to feel like an artifact matters set.
That is true. Award-winning Tolarian Academy later in the show. Now there is because of what happened with the set, the cards, which of course we're going to get to, the mechanics and the cycles and the trivia, and just the power level of things. There's this mysterious time in Magic that has been deemed combo winter.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I wasn't really playing then. I've heard stories. Effectively, it's a nickname that refers to the metagame after the release of Urza Saga, and that's because of how many completely just absurd cards were thrown into standard and competitive play in general. And this caused the old, what's DCI stand for?
The Duelist Convocation International.
Thank you so much.
You sound the conch and the League of Extraordinary Wizards show up to adjudicate what magical maneuvers are permissible and not in various forms of wizardry combat.
That's what they do. Well, they decided a lot of these maneuvers are not okay, especially during their ban announcements to December 98 and March 1999. And I have a full list of that in the trivia section. If you, for some reason, want to jump ahead, we're going to go over that at length. This also caused the first thing ever to happen in Magic history, which this is jumping ahead a little bit to the next episode for Urza's Legacy, but it is worth talking about a little bit here, which is the next set, Urza's Legacy, Memory Jar. A little too good. And so with the cards that were injected in this set and then Urza's Legacy as well, it caused the DCI to do a little emergency ban of Memory Jar because it was too powerful and Combo Winter would have turned into Combo Forever.
Yeah. And for those of you who are younger, or maybe your experience is informed more by Vintage Cube when we're talking about these cards.
Yeah.
Memory Jar seems pretty modest. It has a home in some decks, and it has moments of being spectacular, of course, but it's not just in the same league as a lot of these cards. You might wonder why was this warranting of an emergency ban? And the problem is, well, when you have Tolarian Academy and Dark Ritual, Lotus Petal, et cetera, all legal, then a 5-mana draw 7 artifact is just out of control.
Doesn't cost anything.
If you put Memory Jar in a standard, it would be, I think that's a bad bet. And there's some formats where it would go wrong, but there are some formats where it wouldn't really show up very much.
Yeah, that's true.
It is a function. This is an expression, this emergency ban, of how not bottlenecked on mana people were. And that's really the ultimate failing here. You can argue whether or not you're supposed to do some of the expensive cards in the set that are super good. But if you're actually paying the mana that's described on them, Magic can tolerate a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But there's just too much of, mana costs. There's so many different ways in which the concept of mana as a balancing mechanism doesn't exist anymore with this set and block.
Tolarian Academy, Cradle, Serra Sanctum.
Time Spiral.
Right.
Just untap them all, I guess.
Sure, why not?
One of them's an Academy.
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal?
Yeah. Let's talk about how this. I'm going to laugh during this episode so much.
No, I have this experience with this set so much of going through the visual spoiler and going like, oh yeah, sneak attack. I forgot.
That's the same thing that happened to me.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's in there. Sure,
Yeah,
that's in there too.
Windfall.
Yep.
Oh, the other, the fourth draw 7. I forgot about that one.
That's a thing you can do too. This is the exact same experience. There's another card.
Our Goldfield Enchantress.
Yep, that's in there.
Okay.
Exploration.
Yeah, sure.
It's a really good card.
Yeah.
Just forget that's in here too. The way this set was sold, the traditional way, 15 card boosters, 1 rare, 3 uncommons, 11 commons, packs of featured artwork from, hang on, we got some packs here. There was an episode that we did earlier where we said that this was Sarah Avatar's artwork, and it's not. It's Herald of Sarah. Leave me alone. Okay, I got it wrong. What do you got?
I got a good old Phyrexian Colossus over here.
Okay, that's correct. And then the other one that we don't have is a Chimeric Staff. So those are the 3.
Nice.
Those are the 3 featured artworks on the packs. Then they did something a little new here, which is a 75 card tournament pack. This was the first set here in Urza Saga to replace 60 card starter decks with 75 card tournament decks, with the idea of it being easier to do sealed deck tournaments, which I guess makes some sense, right? Because you just give someone one of these like 75 card packs and it's like, build a deck, go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes
And
sense.
it comes with lands, so that helps the experience too.
You know, like I'm thinking about this now too. Did we PTQ with these? Was this a thing?
I did not play any Saga block PTQs.
Okay.
But I definitely played it's sealed, where it was like you got a sealed deck of Invasion and some boosters of Apocalypse, and
You got like a instead of just, because nowadays it's like 6 packs, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
They give you, but you got like a tournament pack and then like 3 additional boosters or something?
certainly in a competitive setting. Yes,
Yeah, that's what they did.
That was common.
Okay, yeah. I just haven't done that in so long. I forgot that was even a thing. And then this is the fun part. We had 4 pre-constructed theme decks. Here we go. 1 is monocolored, 2 are 2 colors, and 1 is 3 colors. Of course, we're gonna play a little game here with Patrick and see if he can get these correct here. So the first one, Patrick, is called The Plague.
Mono black,
Incorrect. Good guess.
blue black,
Nope.
red black.
Nope.
I'm running out of options.
White black.
White black. Okay.
White black. It's a white black control combo deck focusing on Pestilence. Boy, that's fun. Quote, this black white deck uses the power of Pestilence to infect your opponent with fear while leaving you unscathed.
Is it just pro black creatures? Pestilence?
Probably. I don't know.
Awesome.
It's probably, the deck list is probably on the screen. The rares in this deck are Pariah and Worship. I mean, yeah, just the most fun.
Hey, I just found this really fun game called Magic. Do you want to learn how to play? All right, here's Protection from Color and Worship.
Yeah. Is this fun? And also all your creatures are dead because of Pestilence.
Yeah.
Cool. Super cool. Let's move on to,
It's also weird because can't you be killed through Worship by Pestilence?
Is Pestilence life loss?
I think so.
Let me check really quick.
Let's check this.
It's been a minute since I've looked at it. Also, so there are people who are watching this that are just like, is Pestilence really that good? Yeah.
Unlimited?
Yeah.
It is. Yes, it is. It is also a function of the time.
Also true.
It would be when you can just get 4/4s for 4. That's just all over the place.
Yeah.
Pestilence is a lot more modest.
Pestilence deals 1 damage.
Deals 1 damage. Okay.
Yeah, each creature and player.
Okay, so that's a sweet deck.
Yeah. Okay.
Just Worship Pro Black.
Yeah, you lose.
Okay.
All right. So
what's the next deck?
It's called Sleeper. What do you think that is?
Mono blue,
Incorrect.
blue green,
No.
blue red.
Nope.
I'm not guessing anymore.
Mono white.
Okay.
A white weenie deck focused on sleeping enchantments, which we'll get to in the cycles portion. Quote, this mono white deck exploits the many sleeping enchantments in Urza Saga that will awaken and transform into powerful creatures, end quote. The rares in this deck are Baron's Codex and Opal Titan. All right. Those are nice cards.
Next.
I remember seeing Opal Titan thinking it was good when I was young.
Yeah, it's an appealing design.
Yeah. Next up, Special Delivery.
Red green.
Correct. Well done. An aggro red-green deck focusing on Echo. Quote, come on, man. Quote, this red-green deck makes effective use of cheap creatures with Echo to deliver the damage to your opponent early and often, end quote.
We got a Vug Lizard in there.
I don't know if that's true, but we do have the rares, which in this deck are Growthian Worm and Wildfire. Wildfire with Echo, huh?
Argothian Worm is really high on the list of cards that you do not want to give to a new player.
Yeah.
Because it's so appealing, right? In the same way that Browbeat is. It's like, well, I got a 6/6 Trampler and
for 4.
That's absurd, right?
Yep.
And then if it's dying, like, who cares, right? And the first time that you play it and you're slightly behind and your opponent goes sack a land and it dawns on you that this is just, that's going to happen for the rest of the game unless you do something else. That's and no matter what I have to draw next turn.
That's right.
That's one of those, don't try this at home sort of deals.
I wanted Argothian Worm when I was a kid so bad.
It's not an unappealing design
because I loved land destruction. So I was just like, this is just that's the lock,
right?
Stone Rain, Pillage, Argothian Worm. What can it even do?
But that's actually a really good design principle. There is why people sometimes complain about cards being win more.
Okay,
and win more is actually a sweet thing to do because it feels super powerful without actually adding that much rate. You are correct. Younger you is correct. This thing is sick with Stone Rains and Pillages.
Yeah.
But at any time that is happening, you could cast anything. Doesn't have to be Argothian Worm.
And they're dead.
It just exacerbates all the times that you're behind or you didn't draw your land destruction or whatever.
Oh, that's true.
So that's true. That's the appeal of win more. You get to have this incredible deal. Like, how could this be legal? This is so above rate for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's only good in the games you're already winning, then it's actually not helping your deck.
Yeah, it could just be any card.
Could be a Hill Giant. Who cares?
The final deck is Tombstone. I'll give you a hint. This will make it more fun. It's 3 colors. Tombstone.
Black, blue, green.
No, but you have 2 of the colors correct.
Black, blue, red.
One more try. There it is.
They made 2 different black-white decks?
Yeah. And this one.
Me getting this wrong is not my fault. This is very poorly laid out.
This one is a white, blue, black deck focusing on cycling and reanimation. Quote, blue, black, white is a powerful combination in this reanimator deck. Cycling allows you to get the cards you need when you need them, end quote. The rares in this deck are Abyssal Horror and Somnophore.
Another card that's just not a great new player experience. If you're just playing with random creatures and your opponent casts Somnophore, you are dead.
Dude, nice.
Couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk having worship in only one of the decks.
No.
We got to give someone else Somnophore too.
Well, those are the theme decks.
I had that in my sideboard of my FNM mono blue deck.
Really?
Yeah. Because people played mono green, Stompy style decks or whatever.
Yeah, the Stompy decks look so
good. And if you
good.
cast that against them, they are dead.
All right, I need to read this card again really quick then. I remember the artwork, but okay, so when Somnophore deals damage to a player, tap target creature a player controls, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as Somnophore's on the battlefield. Okay, sure. So and it flies.
Yeah.
Okay, so you hit them, tap your big creature, and they can't kill your creature.
Their creatures have echoes. You have to
Sure. And anytime someone tries to kill it, you just counter their spell.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. That makes sense.
Or submerge them. Whatever.
Yes, please. Urza Saga, by the way, it also had an official guidebook that we bought. Here it is. I'm going to pass this over to you. This is the official guide to Urza Saga, is what it is. It was released in November 1998. Remember that this set was released in October 12th, 1998. So this came out about a month after Urza Saga was released. It was written by the Duelist executive editor Will McDermott. It's a guide that takes a card-by-card look at all the stuff. So, like, not the lands, but like the 330 spells and artifacts and all that jazz, which is kind of cool. In addition, there's a little bit of card analysis going on. The guide includes images of every card in the set, which is cool, and presents a little bit of a look-ski at Urza's story from the explosive end of the Brothers' War, which that's the name of a set, to his discovery of the Thran mana rig. Ooh. Planting some seeds for some future storytelling here. There's an interview with Mike Elliott. There's some stuff here with some beautifully designed work in this 128-page full-color book, again, featuring all the cards and a foreword by Mike Elliott. And then there's also, if you're really into the lore and storytelling, McDermott has a short story here called A Time for Remembrance, which is a short story in the format of a letter from Baron to his daughter Hannah, who we met in Wrath Cycle, Baron's letter details his knowledge of Urza's history with Phyrexia. So, more importantly, I looked at that book a little bit briefly. I think it's cool. This is a thing that like happened in this generation. It reminds me of getting like a walkthrough book of a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was growing up, I played Super Mario RPG, which shout out to Nintendo for remaking that for the Switch, like doing a remaster. But like I have the guidebook too. Mm-hmm. And this kind of reminds me of that sort of thing.
Yeah, so you got a visual spoiler in here, which is really nice. That's just a great feature to have in something like this.
Yeah.
There's also a basically single card guide or summary for every single card in the set.
Oh, really?
No small task. Yeah.
Wow.
In Saga, I mean, it's way too focused on power level. It's just all, this is good and sealed, this is good and constructed, whatever. But, okay, you know,
sure.
fine.
Sure.
Tolarian Academy.
Ooh, read to the class.
Perhaps the most powerful of the legendary lands, Tolarian Academy combines well with artifacts that produce mana. In classic decks with Moxen and Black Lotus, the Academy will be able to produce huge amount of mana on turn 1. Don't know why that's a goal. Tolarian Academy will also work well in blue control decks with Winter Orb, Artifact Mana, Fountain of Youth.
Oh, hello.
Etc.
Take a drink.
Yeah, it is. They are right. It is good with Fountain of Youth. Unfortunately, there are better things to do with it than Fountain of Youth.
I like that they straight up call out. They're just like, yeah, this thing's busted. Here's all the busted ways to use it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well.
Did need a lot of help.
Oh, all right, hold on. So you're not like a competitive player. You're someone who designs the cards.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about how much mana it makes on turn 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. The first turn of the game, huh? Okay. Oh, that's a thing.
Followed up with a windfall.
Dude, I know we haven't got there yet. We're going to get to the trivia section. Windfall's history is incredible.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're going to find out later in the show unless you skip ahead. But that's it for the facts of the set. So we're moving along here. We're going to be skipping the lore this episode and through Urza's block. There's like a bunch of it. It's not really that interesting. And because there are so many cards in this set and each set in Urza's block that we actually have to kind of tell stories about and talk about, we had to make a little bit of a sacrifice. So lore, smell you later, mechanics, right after this. All right, everybody, let's talk about the mechanics of Urza's Saga, of which there are mainly 2. There are some enchantments like sleeper enchantments and growing enchantments that we'll get to here. But if you're here for cycling and echo, you've come to the right place. We're going to start with cycling, a thing that Patrick is not particularly fond of. And I'm sure you'll explain why here in just a moment. It was created by Richard Garfield actually during Tempest design. So this is actually a thing that could have shown up in Tempest. It didn't, but it does show up here, of course, in Urza Saga, and it's still in Magic today. It is a keyword ability that allows the player to pay a cost that includes discarding the card in question. And when the activated ability resolves, the player draws a card. Neat. White has 11 cards in clear, Disciple of Grace, Disciple of Law, Rune of Protection artifacts, black, blue, green, lands, red, white.
It's a lot of slots.
7 of those. And then Shimmering Barrier. Blue has Drifting Djinn, Lingering Mirage, Pendrell Drake, Power Taint, Rescind, Sandbar Merfolk, Sandbar Serpent, and Veiled Serpent. Black has Expunge and Sicken. Red has Brand, Lay Waste, and Scrap. Huge Lay Waste fan here, by the way. Astral Slide, ever heard of it? Green, we got Hush, Lull, Rejuvenate, and Wild Dogs. And then lands, we got 6 of them. Blasted Landscape and the Cycling Lands. Drifting Meadow, Polluted Mire, Remote Isle, Slippery Karst, and Smoldering Crater. Honorable mention to Fluctuator, which made cycling free. That's a problem, by the way.
Couldn't risk people spending mana. That showed up, by the way. Fluctuator was a thing.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Let's talk about cycling. This is its introduction. Obviously, it's been around Magic for a very, very long time. We've talked about it in various ways over the past, 5, 6, 10 years. And this is its introduction.
I started a baseline of being very skeptical of this for so many reasons.
Okay.
One is ostensibly what this is about is helping people with screw and flood, right?
Yeah.
You have, that's the thing that's pointed to, at least. First of all, it's not really that effective at that problem compared to things like down the line we go double face, double-sided cards,
Okay.
or land cycling or whatever.
Yep.
If that was really the thing that was going on here, you could do it a lot more effectively with a bunch of other mechanics that Magic has done down the line.
Okay.
I would also argue part of the reason that's ineffective here is cycling is so much more powerful when you're already ahead. When you have mana laying around and the only thing that can really undo you is flooding out or drawing the wrong mix of spells for a long time.
Okay.
When you're behind, yes, being able to replace cards to find your lands or whatever you're looking for is theoretically helpful. But the fact that it's costing you 2 mana means you can't really play catch up with the mechanic. It's so much better on the front foot than it is when you're trying to find lands early on in the game.
No, that makes sense. Okay.
There's also an issue of how opaque this is to the average player.
Okay.
There are some designs in here that do an okay job, which are, as much as it's fun to make fun of them, the rune protections are actually a good execution of cycling. It is transparent to you when it's not useful.
Okay.
I have a rune green, and you've got a bunch of swamps and mountains in play. Okay, I'm pretty confident this is not going to come up this game. Go find something else.
Okay.
A lot of the cycling cards in here are things like Expunge, which is just, why would I ever want to cycle this? The thought wouldn't even cross my mind to do it if I was, a low-level player doing an F&M sort of draft. I also just don't like the consistency element of it. It's really, in a way, it's pretty color pie bleeding. It's just, the benefits of this are better executed with other mechanics, and the downsides of this mechanic are not features of the other executions. It has its own unique problems, and it's not good at solving the thing it's trying to solve.
So do you think cycling's better if it's just restricted to a single or 2 colors? Like if it's a Demir thing?
I mean, even there, it's like, I'd rather just do more surveil.
Okay.
It's this, why this in particular? And I think the argument is basically, well, it's been around, and so we can keep doing it.
Okay.
That's part of the reason.
Okay.
And it is pretty much a known quantity. It's not hard to balance, Cycling 1 is really dangerous. Cycling 2, you can kind of put all over the place. Cycling 3 approaches a space of, this is not really adding very much power to the card.
Yep.
And so you can eyeball it a little bit too, which is kind of an easier development task in certain ways. But yeah, I get the argument that this is about consistency, but it's just not very effective at it relative to other options that are a lot more appealing or don't have nearly the same downside risk.
I'm taking a look at the cycling cards here. I want to figure out what the best cycling card in this set was. Probably the cycling lands?
Yeah, I mean, on raw rate, I would probably argue Blasted Landscape is the best of the bunch.
Okay.
But plenty of those cards had, people play them or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, brand new mechanic, which one of these stand out as like, well, you have to play this card. Lay Waste is maybe in that space just because land destruction is a thing that people were doing back then in a meaningful way. So once you've killed other lands, you know what you could use? New card. Yeah,
that's a really good example of exacerbating the person who is ahead issue. Yeah. When are you cycling Lay Waste? It's either you're so far behind that you can't imagine doing it, or you're so far ahead that you can't imagine doing it.
Yeah, you don't need it anymore. Okay. Let's talk about the other mechanic of the set, the other main mechanic of Urza Saga, which is Echo. A keyword ability on permanents that requires the permanent's controller to pay its echo cost at the beginning of their deck's upkeep after they gain control of it or sacrifice it. Okay. White has 1 in Herald of Sarah. Red has 7 in Crater Hellion, Goblin Patrol, Goblin War Buggy, Lightning Dragon, Shivan Raptor, Viashino Outrider, and Vug Lizard. You mentioned this earlier. And then green has, I love the green echo cards so much. What? Okay. Acridian, thank you. Albino Troll. One of my favorite cards of all time. Citanal Centaurs, Cradle Guard.
Love a Cradle Guard.
Young me thought Cradle Guard was busted.
You and I had a lot of the same reaction to these green
3 mana 4/4. You kidding me?
Trample.
Pouncing Jaguar.
Game.
Another favorite for me. And then Winding Worm. That's 5 mana 6/6 Echo. Not great, but it's pretty big.
Yeah.
This is a fun thing for me to look at now, 25-ish years later, because young me was just like, these cards, oh my God, they're huge, especially the green ones. I didn't really put together like Crater Hellion's awesome and it kills all of their stuff and it probably kills all their stuff and not mine. And I still have a huge bozo left over. Lightning Dragon is just a really cool looking card and I don't really care what the mana cost could have been 10. I don't care. Look at this thing, right? But this is so appealing I think Echo's an appealing design for someone who is like newer or doesn't understand like the spiky elements of the game and what's really going on in this set with like Tolarian Academy and all this other nonsense. I kind of love it, even though it's not good classically.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got back into Magic, I played with Albino Troll and Cradle Guard all over the place.
Yeah.
My issue with Echo as a mechanic is, I mean, it's pretty much just the card file. Here,
okay.
Which is you play a creature, and most of the time the value you get out of playing a creature is its ability to block the following turn.
Okay.
Some things have haste or ETPs, but that at a baseline is what playing a creature does. The following turn, you get the option to attack, and then your options expand so much beyond that. What that means is the question of whether or not you pay Echo on a regular creature is a no-brainer. Of course you pay Echo because you're not paying 2 mana to be able to block one thing one turn.
Sure.
To the extent that Albino Troll is powerful, it's all right, now the next turn I have a regenerating attacker.
Yep.
So the way that I think that you could do Echo in a way that is, and maybe you're not supposed to do the upkeep cost stuff anyway, but an execution of it that's good for what it is in the following set, Deranged Hermit. Because like how much rate is tied in Deranged Hermit surviving? Confusing. How bad is it if you pay 5 mana and then your Deranged Hermit gets killed? Sometimes really bad. Sometimes you don't really care.
Yep.
That's a really good example. Another example of an Echo design that you could talk me into, Ball Lightning. That's another, like, you've surprised your opponent and now do you want to keep it around next turn or not?
Sure.
Maybe Ball Lightning is too intensive of a rate, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you want it to die after you got your hit of 6 in?
Right.
Or move on?
Yeah, or move on. And has the game shifted in a way where maybe I'm valuing this thing or it's time to go and do something else.
Yeah.
Here, it just on random creatures, that never manifests. It's like, of course I have to do it. So the times that it's not happening are because you're getting stone rained. And that just that just exacerbates the frustration.
Yep.
Another way that I could see doing Echo, there's probably some Magic mechanic that's similar to this, probably a bunch of them, is Echo is basically you cast this card, and then the next turn you can pay its mana cost again to get a discrete bonus. So imagine that Albino Troll was green 1, 2/2, green 1 regenerate.
Okay.
Echo, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Okay,
so
sure.
The next turn you can pay again.
Yep.
Now it's a 3/3, or you move on into 2/2.
Okay, sure.
That's a way of doing the. There's an upkeep cost, and maybe sometimes I want to do it, and maybe sometimes I don't want to do it, or I need to think about the way that I'm sequencing my cards, so I'm spreading out my mana cost in the right way. That paying the Echo is not that bad. That's a lot of the tactical spiky joy that players like you and I get out of playing Echo. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, here it manifests just as a drawback because you would never not pay it unless you were under extreme circumstances. If you could afford to pay it, and so when it comes up, it's because I couldn't afford to pay it because all my lands can't untap or got destroyed or whatever,
or contamination.
Yeah,
cool. Who knows what? Yeah, a fun card.
That was actually one of my breakthroughs again with this mono blue deck. Was a lot of the list played one copy of the blue cycling land.
Okay. That is Remote Isle.
Yeah, a lot of people had one Remote Isle. It's just, I kind of want 25.5 lands to play one of these, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I replaced it with a Slippery Karst.
Okay.
So it's the green cycling land.
Okay.
So when I treachery their albino troll, I could pay Echo.
Oh, man. Look at you.
Which is, first of all, sick. But second of all, when that actually comes up, they know it was with you in mind.
That's true.
This was not a mistake.
That's true.
I could have played the blue one. I could have played Blasted Landscape. I chose not to. Why? You're albino troll.
Yeah, that's
which
mine
you
now.
can't beat because you're playing mono green. Good luck.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Attack you again. They have no good blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
That's
Love
when
it.
I was in the lab.
Many moons ago.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about free spells or rebate spells, whatever you want to call them, because free is not technically true here because you have to pay mana, but I digress. Spells that, upon their resolution, there's a trigger and it allows the caster to untap up to a certain number of lands. I will note, I learned the hard way once at an F&M growing up. I believe the name is Chris Jones, who, if you're watching this, I hope you are well. He's playing a Mesmeric Orb deck.
Okay.
Had like multiple Mesmeric Orbs against me. And this is like when I was like 17, 18. Thought I was hot shit. And so he's got like a couple Mesmeric Orbs going. And I cast a spell and he rewinds it. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like untap your lands and mill a bunch. And he's like, no, untap your lands.
Oh.
With rewind. Because it can be anyone's lands that you untap. Which when this happened, I was like, no way.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen someone choose someone else with rewind. He milled me for 8 cards. And then I lost.
Designed with commander in mind.
Smart.
As the expression goes.
That's right. The 4 cards that are free are Great Whale, Peregrine Drake, Rewind, and some card called Time Spiral. I like calling these rebate spells, especially in that era. Do you remember like when getting a rebate was like the nuts? That was like a thing that like Best Buy and Circuit City and all these places were just like,
I've gotten a rebate as recently as 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. This was like the thing because I remember the computer that my family got, the first one, there was like a huge rebate deal on it. So that's why I like calling these rebate spells instead of free spells. But yeah, look, you cast a Great Whale, it ETBs, you get to untap 7 lands. You resolve Time Spiral, you get to untap 6 lands. What a bunch of cards these are.
So first of all, these required errata because they originally worked entering the battlefield from any zone.
Oh, that's right, with Great Whale.
Great Whale recurring. Right. Great Whale recurring nightmare was an issue. Yeah. Shout out Dave Humphreys. Did well with that if memory serves.
Okay.
So there's one design in the bunch that I like here, and it's kind of interesting. I like Rewind. That's a really cool design.
Okay.
Because it kind of only works on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
So it's not about just slamming a bunch of cards proactively down. It's okay. I can play this and then I get my mana back. So maybe I have another counter spell but it's not without an interaction point because your shields are down with Rewind on the stack. If something happens to Rewind, you're not getting your lands back.
Yep.
So it plays pretty well as a defensive mechanic in small doses. The proactive stuff is challenged.
It's a bit much.
Especially with lands that make so much mana.
I forgot that Great Whale, you could just recur it and just whoop.
Yeah.
And do that. Yeah. I forgot that was a thing.
So these eventually required, Palancron certainly forced their hand, but it was already an issue with Great Whale.
We'll be talking about that when we get to Urza's Legacy, old Palancron. Time Spiral, obviously the most renowned of the bunch for pretty obvious reasons. It did get banned for a little while and unbanned and stuff. You're shaking your head. They decided.
What's the point of this? This is where it really breaks down. It's like you take this card, Time Twister.
Yeah.
Which is an iconic Magic design. It blows people's minds the first time they see it. How could this possibly be fair? Particularly when some of the time it is actually as good as it looks. What's the balancing mechanism? Well, it's really bad to let your opponent go first.
Yep.
So either you Twister, say go, and that's going to be rough a lot of the time, or you have to wait until you have like 6 mana, then Twister, and you can do some stuff, but your opponent's still probably going to be cracking back with more mana on the next turn because you had to pay your 3 up front to Time Twister in the first place.
That's right.
What if instead of that, it just costs 0 or occasionally negative mana?
Yes, right. Because of Tellurian Academy, you see.
It's just such a bad, in some ways it highlights the worst impulses of the set, which is how do we take something like sweet that's balanced and then just take the guardrails off.
Yeah.
Is it still a fun experience? Do people look at Time Spiral the way they look at Time Twister? No, of course not.
No, that's not even close to the same. Not even a little bit. Let's talk about growing enchantments. This is what they're deemed in my research. These enchantments that start out with, without the ability to do anything but put some counters on them. So this is hence the term growing. A growing enchantment accumulates counters on its controller's upkeep, and then it builds up to produce a big effect, which is actually kind of cool. If you think about it, it reminds me of your Dreadship Reefs of the world. These lands that can get counters are like, what was it? Bottomless Pit? Like that style of thing, right?
Did you ask him to come over here and say that?
What?
Did you ask him to say that?
What the hell are you talking about?
And this is kind of speaking towards the fact that this actually is more of an enchantment set, or at least it was intended to be an enchantment set and not an artifact set. Which actually, quick sidebar, I think that's part of the reason that Urza Saga, the card, is an enchantment.
For sure.
That has to, and I think it's like a little inside joke of it's an enchantment, but it makes artifacts because you think this is an artifact set, but it's an enchantment set. Just saying, maybe some wizardry going on there with the design of that card. While those in Urza Saga all used verse counters and sacrificed themselves, once we get to Urza's Destiny, you're going to see some weird stuff going on over there with this sort of thing. So let's just focus on Saga for right now and the enchantments that we had. So there's White had 2 in Sarah's Hymn and Sarah's, I'm going to go with Liturgy, Liturgy. Liturgy, thank you. See, I'm always learning. Blue.
I don't know if that's right.
You did better than I did.
Okay.
Blue has Lifting Refrain and Recantation. Black has Vile Requiem and Discordant Dirge. Red has Torch Song and Rumbling Crescendo. Green has War Dance and Midsummer Reveal. And then we got an artifact here in Baron's Codex and Lotus Blossom. Lotus Blossom is a card I played a lot when I was a kid because it's like a Lotus card. Duh. It's like Black Lotus, but not even close. I think these are a cool idea. None of these cards ended up being particularly good, obviously, in Magic's history, but just the idea of, I kind of treat these like a ticking time bomb that the opponent has to be a little bit scared of because it's on board, there's a big effect coming, but you don't know how big it's going to be, which is kind of a cool story in a game.
I think these designs are cool when they are proactive, and you call out the Lotus and Bottomless Pit that's about the most proactive Dreadship Reef. Most proactive execution. You're just spending time or energy, however, building this up, and then the output is going to be something related to having a lot of mana.
Yeah.
This recipe really breaks down when the output is Terror or Stone Rain, which is 2 of them.
That's true.
It's like, do you just, so I have 2 creatures, and your Terror Refrain goes up to 2.
Sure.
Am I supposed to keep casting stuff or just wait?
Sure.
And you just get the counters on it passively. So you just can wait as long as you want. The Stone Rain one also runs into a similar issue, which is just, I can't really engage with what's going on here. So you're just going to do it when it makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's Rumbling Crescendo.
That is Rumbling Crescendo.
Let's take a look here really quick. It's probably between us right now. This thing is expensive. It costs $5.
It's not good. But that's not the point.
Yeah, during your upkeep, you can put a verse counter on this thing and then pay red, sacrifice Rumbling Crescendo, destroy up to X target lands, where X is the number of verse counters on Rumbling
Also,
Crescendo.
do you really need to do this at rare with Wildfire at rare?
Probably not. They're basically
How many of these do we need to... We have Destructive Urge if you really want to get your repeat scaling Stone Rains in.
We've asked this question about their design with land destruction.
What are we doing here?
Lay Waste in the set also.
Lay Waste is at least the sensibilities of Raise. I forgot about that one too.
One of my favorites. Yeah. I was so bad when I was young. Man, I would kill the shit out of your lands while you were killing me.
Really good against Echo. Raise is really good against Echo.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about sleeping enchantments. These are enchantments that don't do a single thing until someone does whatever it is that's necessary to wake them up. The sleeping enchantments required your opponent to cast a spell. Or this originally read successfully cast a spell, but then they changed it to make it so just when they cast it, it triggers it. So it is kind of weird that they cast a thing that would trigger it, you counter it, and it's just cool, I guess it's still asleep.
Yeah.
So the change there does make some sense. Sleeping enchantments, they turned into creatures, so it's worth noting that when they turn into creatures, which I had to read these a couple of times, they're no longer enchantments, because you would think when they wake up that they would be creature enchantments, but this is before Magic was doing like the whole like bestow enchantment creature kind of thing. You know?
This execution leaves a lot on the table, because first of all, it's not doing any of like the cool card type matter stuff you could do with this sort of design space, but it's an enchantment all the time and it's a creature some amount of the time.
Yeah.
Or you could make it that it no longer is enchantment, becomes a creature, and then you can play around with the thing flipping around.
Yeah.
Additionally, another issue here is that it's all predicated on your opponent cooperating.
Yep.
So you could imagine, for example, I mean, Magic does designs like this, right? It was, an enchantment that at the start of your turn, surveil 1, and then when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, this transforms into a creature.
Yeah, sure. Like Search for Visconta-esque.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of there's a whole lot of design space in there that this set doesn't really play around with. So my issue with the sleeping enchantments is not so much the concept in and of itself. I think the concept is a very good one. It's just, well, there's so much cool stuff you could be doing here, and instead you do the execution that's like the least cool.
As far as the sleeping enchantments are concerned, I got 5 white ones here: an Opal Acrolith, Opal Archangel, Opal Caryatid, Opal Gargoyle, and the Mighty Opal Titan. Blue has the Veiled Cycle and Veil of Birds, Veiled Apparition, Veiled Crocodile, Veiled Sentry, and Veiled Serpent. And then green has the hidden ones: Hidden Ancients, Hidden Gorillas, Hidden Herd, Hidden Predators, Hidden Spider, and Hidden Stag. So
it's a lot of those.
That's 16. That's 16 of those. None of which are particularly good, but those
That's a full 5% of the set.
that could also trick you into being like, hey, these cards are cool. Like they did with me. Like I remember just always looking at Opal Titan and thinking that card's super rad, which like it is kind of rad.
And Opal Titan is really rad.
Yeah.
That doesn't justify 16 worse ones. Just do Opal Titan as a design. That's fine. Cool card.
That's also true. But they love their cycles or something close to it. No new creature types were introduced in Urza Saga, so no game for us to play here. But those are the mechanics of the set, which, cycling, it's kind of whatever, but it stood the test of time with Echo, which comes and goes in Magic nowadays. We don't see it often, but we do see it occasionally. And we've got like these enchantments that grow and these enchantments that sleep. I'm trying to think, there's got to be like a sleeping enchantment style thing now, right? Or something in that space that they've probably done.
I mean, you could argue the sagas are like that in Neon Destiny.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I like to me, the enchantment stuff, hearts in the right place, cards just aren't very good.
Or appealing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's more like, what's the dream that you live with this card? It's, well, my opponent plays the right card type and then I maybe get a slightly above rate creature.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to do the slightly above rate creature thing, there's all these Echo designs you could already be playing with. So it's not even
that's true.
adding anything new in like a power level or what kind of deck that I can construct sense. And the fact that it's not, the set really isn't touching on the fact that they are enchantments, except for a handful of busted rares where these are not the best thing to do with it anyway, like Argothian Enchantress or Sarah Sanctum.
Yep.
They just kind of fall flat. There's the kernel of a really good idea here, and you know that because there's plenty of extensions of this execution in Magic's history that are fun and play really well and do cool stuff with the card types. This is just not it.
Mechanics, done. Cycle, so much fun. Right after this. All right, everybody, it is now time for the cycles of Urza Saga here on the Resleevables. Before we do dive in, we got to give a shout out to our wonderful sponsor of this section, the one, the only, Brian Colville and his YouTube channel, Bosch and Roll.
Head over to youtube.com/BoschNRoll to watch Eternal Constructed Specialist Brian Colville play a new Eternal deck every single weekday. With over 1,000 videos in his YouTube archive, if there's a certain Eternal card or deck that you want to see in action, Brian has almost certainly played with it, and there will be video for you to watch of it. Best of all, Brian is outrageously good at Magic, as he's a SCG Tour Invitational Champion, a Grand Prix champion, and an Eternal Weekend Vintage champion. YouTube.com/BoschandRoll, where Magic history is played every day.
All right, everybody. Cycles, 7 of them. That's what Urza Saga brings to the table. We're going to start with, I don't think boring's fair. I was going to say boring. It's only boring because I've seen various versions of cycling lands.
Mm-hmm.
The first time you see these, it's probably pretty cool.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, talk about of all the cards in Magic where it's like, no matter what level of player I'm at, I know when this is bad. It's a land.
Yep.
So there you go. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. These are basically just common lands that cycle. We've seen other versions of these before, but the 5 here are Drifting Meadow, Remote Isle, Polluted Mire, Smoldering Karst, and apparently Patrick's favorite, Smoldering Crater, and then Patrick's favorite, Slippery Karst. Just one of those in there, huh?
Just in case.
Look how smart you are. There's also an additional one there in Blasted Landscape, which is not part of the cycle, but is part of the cycle. It's the 6th one. It adds only colorless mana, but it enters the battlefield untapped because it doesn't provide a color.
Really important for Fluctuator combo decks because you want to go off on turn 2, but your cycling lands come into play tapped. You
Smart.
see.
I get it. Next up is the Embrace cycle. Give me a hug. It's auras, which people didn't really play, of course. The auras nowadays are significantly better. The auras back in the day were quite bad. So this cycle was made, which combined several abilities on a card with a mana cost of 2 and then 2 colored mana. So 2 white, 2 green, 2 blue, basically like that. And the neat thing here about this cycle is that each of the cards refers to a rare creature from either Alpha or Urza Saga, which means we get to play our first game of the day. See, I'm going to name
These cards are very cool, by the way.
They are cool. They are cool.
What if you made a creature enchantment that some people would play with sometimes, not because it was super cheap or cycling or whatever, but it made your creature sick and it made it more survivable in different ways.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just an all or nothing, here's something on Invisible Stalker, maybe you have a maybe not. But it's like, no, sometimes they still can't kill it, but sometimes the enchantment that you put on it makes the removal not work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name the Embrace and you name the creature it's made after.
Okay.
Sarah's Embrace.
Sarah Angel?
That is correct. Zephid's Embrace.
Zephid?
That is correct. Vampiric Embrace.
Sanger Vampire.
That is correct. Shiv's Embrace.
Shivan Dragon.
4 for 4. Gaia's Embrace.
Child of Gaia.
5 for 5. Thought he was going to say Gaia's Liege. Now, more importantly, I don't know if it's Gaia or Gaia. I always said Gaia's when I was growing up. Gaia's Liege, Gaia's Embrace, Child of Gaia, which was a card I wanted when I was younger, and young me couldn't afford one.
They were expensive.
I know. Look at it. 6 mana, 7/7 trample. Pay 2 green, and then you can't. It's basically unkillable. It's basically an unkillable machine.
Yeah, more variations of Echo in here.
That's right.
This, you could argue, Argothian Worm.
Dude, we can't talk about that card. Too many bad memories. Just so many memories of me casting that, my opponent sacrificing a land, and young me being like,
"Oh,
got him.
Yeah.
I got him.
Oh, no, I had the opposite
all right, I'm at 10.
I cast it. My opponent sacked a land, and I immediately understood the implication and cut it from the deck.
Not me. It took me a little while because I was just like, no, but seriously, like once it gets in, like I'd go down to 6, and I'm just like, okay, here it is. Like you don't have any lands left to sacrifice, and I die like 3 turns later. Right. But it's okay. It's okay. We got some legendary lands here. Maybe you guys have heard of these. We'll find out. Urza Saga had 5 legendary lands. 3 of them produced a specific color of mana and a bunch of it, while the other ones produced colorless and then had the second ability that you could use on them. I'm being somewhat vague, so let's talk about them. Sarah's Sanctum, Tolarian Academy, Phyrexian Tower, Shivan Gorge, Gaia's Cradle. 3 of these are much better than the other 2, though Phyrexian Tower is certainly no slouch, and then there's Shivan Gorge, which we'll get to in just a moment. So, this is the thing that I want to talk about in this episode probably the most, because I think these might be the most iconic cards from Urza Saga.
Sure.
There's a lot of iconic cards from this set. Game designer Patrick, how the hell do these get out the door?
Well, if you refer back to the handbook that we were reviewing earlier in the show, the designers seem to imply that tapping for a lot of mana on the first turn is a feature.
Not a bug.
Not a bug.
Okay.
Don't really know. I mean, you can talk yourself at least in the case of you can sort of make defensible arguments about all of them except for Tolarian Academy.
Okay.
And with Gaia's Cradle, it's like, okay, yeah, this is super busted, but the standard case is going to be playing with a bunch of creatures, just maybe casting bigger creatures that your smaller creatures help you cast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can see that as a thing worth subsidizing. Sarah Sanctum. Really hard for that card to be exploding on turn 2.
Yeah.
Even if you do eventually start getting the engine rolling, it's not happening right away. Phyrexian Tower. Some cool stuff going on there. Very cool story.
Ignore my smile. Just keep going.
Shivan Gorge. Not really sure what happened there. It's really bad. And this is a cycle of completely outrageous cards. But that's fine because it's not hurting anyone. Academy is really the one where I can't even begin to think of what the argument could be to do that.
So we're going to do a little fun exercise here this is off the cuff. This is not script related. I'm shutting my laptop. So you read, have you read anything in here besides the Academy thing? Like, did you read this when we got it?
No.
Okay. So you read the Academy thing. I'm going to read it again. It's from earlier in the show. This is the description in the official guide to Urza Saga. Perhaps the most powerful of the legendary lands, Tolarian Academy combines well with artifacts that produce mana. In classic decks, with Moxen and Black Lotus, the Academy will be able to produce huge amounts of mana on turn 1. Tolarian Academy also works well in blue control decks with Winter Orb, artifact mana, and as you mentioned,
Found in Youth.
It
gives you mana and it gives you something to do with your mana.
That's right. So in that description, it is mentioned extremely powerful cards like Black Lotus, Moxen, Winter Orb. And you know what? I'm going to put it in there too. Fountain of Youth. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the fun part. Here's Gaia's Cradle. This legendary land may see a lot of play in green horde decks as yet another way to get your big creatures out fast. With Gaia's Cradle and several elves, you might even be able to get a Child of Gaia into play.
Okay.
Well,
your game should be balanced in a way that casting a 6-mana creature should not be impossible. We're not talking about casting Blightsteel Colossus. We're just talking about a 6-mana creature with an upkeep cost.
No.
You might. We finally made an enabler that means that all the cards that have nothing to do with winning, that are super appealing, maybe you could cast before your opponent time spirals 4 times in a turn and kills you.
Dream big. Phyrexian Tower. The black legendary land, Phyrexian Tower turns all of your creatures into a miniature dark ritual. This land could be put to good use as a finisher card in a drain life combination deck. Okay, that's true.
And this was a card that took a little. This is probably set aside Shivan Gorge.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the more. Oh, I need really specific cards to make this work.
Yes.
The other 3 just make huge loads of mana if you're playing a super linear deck. Okay, that's easy to get my head around. This one is, all right, well, what kind of creatures do I want to sacrifice? And then down the line, it's like, oh, Academy Rector comes out. Now we have like a deck. That's
got a little something cooking.
We got something cooking.
Sarah Sanctum. Providing white mana based on enchantments you control, Sarah Sanctum may see play in some specialty combination decks that are dependent on a lot of enchantments. Like the other legendary lands, Sarah Sanctum is better in constructed than sealed deck play since it needs a deck built around it.
Mm-hmm.
All correct. And then, of course, the Gorge.
Although Cradle is good and sealed.
That's true. Yeah.
Echo cards.
Because you play creatures. Shivan Gorge. Just what red needed, another way to deal damage. This land-based Tim can only be used against opponents, but it is colorless damage, so not preventable by a Rune of Protection red. Plus, since it's a land, Shivan Gorge can't be countered. Expect this land to appear in every slide deck in the world. I did not make that up. Now, As we've read those 5 land descriptions from the official guide to Urza Saga, only one of them mentions Moxen and Black Lotus by name. They knew. They knew which one was the best of the bunch, and they're just like, send it out the door.
Yeah, fortunately, there's no analogs to those cards in Standard right now, like Lotus Petal or Mox Diamond. So if people want to go crazy in Classic, that's fine. No harm done.
Okay.
Shivan Gorge is a mandatory play. And there were times where like people talked about cutting a wasteland from their deck because of Fire Blast and Ball Lightning. And it just like, I can't handle colorless lands.
In slide decks everywhere.
And against that backdrop, you're like, oh yeah, Shivan Gorge. It's a mandatory play.
That's right.
It's also, it says 3 mana to untap it. You died 2 turns ago. This is not even close.
Let's talk about these enchantments that never die. When these common aura enchantments, each with a converted mana cost of 2, go to the graveyard, they return to their owner's hand. It's Rancor before Rancor, everybody. White had Brilliant Halo, blue had Launch, black had Despondency, red had Fiery Mantle, and green had Fortitude.
Super modest. I don't mind these designs in terms of trying to get some enchantment matter, more reliability for the enchantment synergies in sealed or whatever. These are just, first of all, they're so weak. And second of all, there isn't any support for the enchantment matter stuff anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that they exist. This is just another cycle of enchantments, like the growing enchantments and sleeping enchantments, which is, again, why this set is deemed an enchantment based set ultimately, where it's just like, yeah, I mean, I guess you tried, but not really great.
Yeah, it's an enchantment matter set. How can you tell? There are a lot of enchantments in here.
Yes.
Okay, is there anything? No, that's it. There's just a lot of them. You open your pack. After you open up 10 packs, you go, man, I feel like maybe there's slightly more enchantments in this set than most sets. Okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're onto us.
Enchantments matter. We got it.
Let's talk about the rare growing enchantments, where each of these, we've talked about the growing enchantments earlier in the mechanics portion, but this is the rare versions of these. So Sarah's Liturgy. That's probably close. Recantation, Discordant Dirge, Rumbling Crescendo, and Midsummer Reveal. They get bigger and then a big thing happens, and these are expensive, so ideally the big thing that happens is a really big deal. Cool. Then we have the uncommon growing enchantment. Same thing here. White is Sarah's Hymn, blue is Lifting Refrain, black is Vile Requiem, red is Torch Song, and then green is War Dance. So there's that. Now let's get to what everybody's here for. It's the main event. Runes of Protection. These common enchantments are similar to the Circle of Protections. Oh, you don't say. But their activation cost is white. Aha. Rather than a generic colorless mana. So that means that you couldn't just splash them into your deck to solve problems. And also their cycling ability.
Well, I would
really
say
smart. If
you're going to do cycling and you're going to do enchantment matters, arguably this is a nice intersection.
That's right. That's right. Now, there are the 5, but they also made 2 additional ones. Obviously, white, blue, black, red, green. You have to do all 5. You can't just do 2 or 3. But why only do 5 when you can do 7? Rune protection artifacts.
Sure. It's not a bad backstop, actually.
Okay.
I like rune of protection artifacts more than any other rune.
This one cost a white to activate as well.
Yeah.
Where circle protection artifacts cost 2 colorless mana to activate. So big difference there as far as targeting artifacts is concerned. And then Rune of Protection lands, which is rare.
Take that, Shivan Gorge.
Yeah.
Is there any other land in Magic's history that deals damage at this point? Like anything you could give yourself protection from?
So first thing that comes to mind is Mistress Factory.
Okay, great.
It's the first one that comes to mind. And then the Gorge. I think that's probably it.
I don't know for sure, but it's not a long list.
No, it's definitely not a long list. So for some reason they felt the need to print this and make it a rare. Okay, sure.
Sweet.
All 7 of them were illustrated by Scott Fisher and featured the same woman in the artwork. So that's a cool fun fact there. Or trivia fact for you trivia folks out there. And as we oftentimes make fun of here on this show, the folks that were designing Magic at the time just couldn't get away from land destruction. They couldn't get away from circle protections, or in this case, rune protections.
I'm giving them a pass here. One, because it
hate you.
actually does kind of fit in the architecture.
Okay.
And second, it's just nowhere near the list of worst sins in this set.
So
Like, of course you would cut these things. What are we even doing here?
Yeah.
But compared to other stuff going on, it's like, okay, I guess someone somewhere is imagining doing something on turn 2 and then getting to untap.
So here's my problem with these.
Okay.
Of which I have a very large one, because there's an acknowledgement here that the circle of protections are too good.
To an extent, yeah.
Yes, they're too good because they're splashable and they require colors mana activate. But we still want to have this sort of gameplay around. So we're going to make them less good because you need white mana to activate them, which means that only white heavy decks theoretically can play them. But also, when they're not good, you can just cycle it away.
Also, you never have to worry about extra dead copies.
Yes. So that is the problem that I have with this, is there is a real acknowledgement of we still want this to be a thing.
Yeah, they still have not. There's still a forest for the trees thing going on here for sure. But this is a step in the right direction. It's at least about something.
So you're right that it's a step in the right direction insofar as if you're hell-bent on doing circle protections, this is the way you're supposed to do them.
Right.
So you're right about that. But also, could we not?
Yes, that is.
How about that?
That's the missing element.
How about that? Lastly, I've got some uncommon enemy color hate, aka hoses. Each color contains here in Urza Saga an uncommon that it's here to mess up some colors. So we're gonna play our guessing game now, where I'm gonna pick the color. I'm gonna see if Patrick can name the 2 hate cards in each color. Remember, it's hating its enemy color, so that gives you a little bit of a hint here. So as an example, white, its enemy's colors are red and black. So what are the 2 white hate cards?
Absolute Law, Absolute Grace.
That is correct. Blue. It hates red.
Oh God. Remember this one. I don't have it. Douse. Okay.
It hates green.
Hibernation.
Correct. Black.
Do they have the 2 paladins, East and West?
Those are in the set. Those are 2 things, but that's not the answers that I have here.
There's another uncommon hoser.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm sure these are both so egregious. All right, I don't know.
I don't have a great memory for these being egregious. So the first one's Yawgmoth's Edict.
Okay, it's not even a card.
Which is, I want to see what this does actually.
Persecutes in the set too.
Yeah, dude, it's a real set. Yawgmoth's Edict is 1 and a black, an enchantment. Whenever one of your opponents successfully casts a white spell, that player loses a life and you gain a life. That's not very good. And then Bereavement.
Okay.
Which is Between Us, almost assuredly. And this is same thing, but so whenever a green creature is put into a graveyard from play, its controller chooses and discards a card. So that's pretty modest compared to what they've done in the past. Or what they brought with red, which hates white and blue.
You get Scald.
That's the blue one.
That card's really messed up. And I don't remember the red on white one.
Disorder.
Help me.
1 in a red sorcery. Disorder deals 2 damage to each white creature and each player who controls a white creature.
Pretty messed up. Yeah. Could be. Certainly there's some spots in metagames that would be really good.
Lastly is green. It hates blue and it hates black. The hater of blue you should get. The
Carpet
hater
of Flowers.
That's correct. The hater of black should be harder.
Is it Bull Hippo or some Swamp Walker or something?
Is it Bull Hippo? It's great. I'm sorry. It's Spreading Algae.
Okay.
Which I think this just eats swamps alive for breakfast. Let me see what this does really quick. Is it Bull Hippo is far funnier than it should be. Spreading Algae is a single green enchant land played only on a swamp. When that land becomes tapped, destroy it and put Spreading Algae back in the grip.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it kind of is actually.
Yeah.
So those are your hate cards, your hoses of the set, and those are your cycles. So some growing enchantments, the Rune of Protections, please go away. But most notably, cycling lands and the legendary lands, which it's funny to call the legendary lands a cycle because Shivan Gorge is part of the cycle. Didn't we do this? What do we do where it was like, we did an episode, the biggest gulf between best best card in the cycle and worst card in the cycle.
Yeah, so there's a couple different, what's the biggest gap between 1 and 2?
Yeah.
What's the biggest gap between 1 and 5?
Yeah.
This is, I think, the cycle with by far the biggest gap between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Whichever card you have at 4 is still messed up.
Yep.
Would be
certainly Phyrexian Tower.
Yeah, which is like a very strong magic card.
Yeah.
And Shivan Gorge is like, yeah, you should probably not play this in your red draft decks.
Yeah. Yes, that's probably true. a must play in Sly. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it is not. Those are the cycles. Trivia is coming up next, where we got a lot of cards to talk about. We got some random fun stuff and some functional reprints. So we'll see you back here for that in just a sec. All right, everybody. It is now time to dive into the trivia aspect of Urza's Saga. Now, we got a bunch of fun different things to talk about here, and actually a new section of trivia too, which is nice. So first things first, functional reprints. For those of you who are a fan of this sort of thing, I got 8 for you. Argothian, it's just really bad. So Argothian Swine is the name of the card. But whenever I think of swine, I just think of you saying swine. Mm-hmm. You've ruined the word for me. It's a functional reprint of War Mammoth from 5th edition and a Wild Elephant from Mirage. Blanchwood Treefolk is a functional reprint of Plated Worm from Portal 2nd Age. Dromasaur is a functional reprint of Raging Gorilla from Visions. Hollow Dogs is a functional reprint of Charging Bandits from Portal. Mobile Fort is a functional reprint of Walking Wall from Ice Age. Sarah Zealot is a functional reprint of Tundra Wolves from 5th edition. Spiral, which is a card I used to cast a lot when I was a kid, is a functional reprint of Sage Owl from Weatherlight. And then the Unworthy Dead is a functional reprint of every Drudge Skeleton that's ever been made, ever. So congratulations, Unworthy Dead. Now, let's move on to random trivia, of which I have some accompanying videos. So here we go. Our wonderful editor, John's going to make some magic happen here. Morphling, let's talk about it. Was originally intended to be a reprint of Clone, per Mark Rosewater, but it had to be redesigned after the art had been finalized because at the time, the game rules couldn't properly handle clone effects. We got a video from Mark Rosewater explaining this at a MagicCon panel, I believe, right now.
Okay, so here's what happened. So in Alpha, there was a card called Clone, and Clone was a really awesome card. But there's the comprehensive rules early on didn't like cloning. They didn't quite know what to do with it. So for a while, we banned Clone. We weren't allowed to make any cards that clone. But we got to Urza Saga, and we said, you know what? Cloning is awesome. This is crazy. We should just make Clone. Now, if you look at the art of Clone, it's 2 creatures that look alike facing each other. Well, if you look at Morphling, that's basically what's going on, although one of them has a tail. So this card was just supposed to be Clone. That's all it was. It was going to be, we were bringing back Clone. And then right after the art came in, but before we finalized the set, the rules manager said, look, we can't make it work. There's no way cloning can work in Magic. You can't do Clone. And so what happened was we had this art and we had to make a card.
Next up is another video here from Mark Rosewater from the same panel. The original planned name for this set was Urza's Odyssey.
Okay.
Which I didn't know, but it was rejected on legal advice at the time. Apparently, legal was just like, you can't call it that. You can't use the term Odyssey, which is weird because they have a set named Odyssey.
What? Well, because of what copyright or whatever issue?
No explanation. Mark will tell you. Watch this.
Okay, Urza Saga, his original name, was Urza's Odyssey. And we really liked Urza's Odyssey. That was the name we wanted. So, for those who don't know, the Urza block is a story of Urza and trying to solve the whole Weatherlight Saga thing. And so anyway, we were told we couldn't use Urza's Odyssey. Now, years later, we made a set called Odyssey, of which I said, how in the world could we not call it that Urza's Odyssey, but Odyssey was fine. And the answer I got was different lawyers, so.
All right, so here's one that I have heard about, but never lived. So this is probably more in your alley here. Waylay.
Mm-hmm.
It had a weird timing issue back in the day where if you cast it on your opponent's end step, the 3 2/2s that you would make would stay until the next end step, which was basically making it like a delayed ball lightning, basically. And this was deemed white lightning back in the day.
Yeah, it's Ball Lightning, except it's split up.
Yeah.
You have the option to block if you want to, instead of making the attackers. Scales with stuff like Crusade.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah, this was absurd.
Yeah, the rules got changed. Like the cleanup step rules got changed not to kind of fix this. But yeah, you could basically go end of turn, waylay, make 3 2/2s, untap, smush you. Even heck, you could even play Crusade before the attack. Good call. Yeah. Glorious Anthem, which is in this set, by the way. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Glorious Anthem, good card in this set. Doesn't even, what is that, like the 87th best card?
Well, it's also one of the few fun cards.
Yeah, can't have that.
It's like, oh, this is fun. And it's an extension of the old design, but in a way that is also more fun.
Yeah.
Just play with any creatures you want. Doesn't have to be all white.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, sweet.
You're dead.
Yeah, you died 2 turns ago.
Last trivia, Phyrexian Colossus. Printed with the collector number of 306 out of 350 when it should have been 305 out of 350. Card number 306 is actually a Phyrexian Processor. So if you ever go look at Scryfall or a layout of the set, they both have 306 on it. Whoopsie. Which, you know what? Mistakes happen. And given the number of sets we've covered and the number of mistakes they used to make way back in the day,
this is not bad.
This is nothing. So I've teased a little bit about ban and restricted cards from this set. So I went through some ban announcements and figured out what the heck was going on here. So this is going to be a fun little trip down memory road, memory lane, whatever it may be. Whatever street we're on, we're going down it. Tolarian Academy. Let's talk about it. Banned in Standard, Extended, and Legacy, and restricted in Vintage in December 1998. Banned in Urza's Block Constructed in June 1999, and banned in Commander in June 2010. It has not been unbanned or unrestricted in anything ever.
This is just so not close. It's not even worth discussing.
What are we doing?
A card that gets banned in every constructed format and Commander really says a lot, because Commander is like, oh, even when you're not trying very hard, this card is completely out of line.
Now, remember, Urza Saga, it was released on October 12th, 1998. This card got banned in December. Just see ya.
Yeah.
See you later. It's unbelievable.
Talk about a format where you would get to see Tolarian Academy next to Fountain of Youth.
Yeah.
That's Commander. And even there, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So
it's
where
just
we gotta
go. Now, you would think that's pretty egregious. And you would be right. But a card we have not mentioned here in a meaningful way, you said it in passing, Windfall.
Mm-hmm.
Between us probably right now. 2 and a blue. Everybody discards their hand, and then everyone draws up to the most discarded cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good on turn 1 when you've made 8 mana.
It's true. So Windfall was banned in Standard, Extended, Legacy, and restricted in Vintage in December 1998, just like Academy. Banned in Urza's Block Constructed in March 1999. Gone. Never to be seen again. Much like Tolarian Academy. So when most people think about Urza Saga, they think about Academy, they think about Cradle, think about Sarah Sanctum, and a bevy of other cards.
Yawgmoth's Will.
Yep. I don't sneak attack. Yeah. Forgot
Show and tell.
You forgot that's in the set too. They don't think about Windfall very much. That card immediately iced, never to be seen again. Incredible to me.
Quite the uncommon.
Incredible. Let's talk about a card we haven't mentioned yet. Stroke of Genius.
Oh, sure.
Something to do with all that blue mana. That card was banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage in December 1998. That December ban announcement was a real doozy. However, Stroke of Genius was unbanned in Legacy in September 2004 and unrestricted in Vintage in December 2004. And it doesn't really see much play now anymore. And we have cards like Blue Sun Zenith and effects that are similar to this. But back then, so I've heard, was a big deal.
Yeah, it's a nice... You kind of could do it twice, one on yourself and then one on them.
Yeah.
This could all happen on the first or second turn. But this is more of a consequence of, you have unlimited mana.
Yeah.
It's not like this effect is particularly strong on rate. It's good, but you can also do Blue Sun Zenith or Sphinx's Revelation or variations of this kind of design. And it's okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a little bit risky. Mm-hmm. It's more of a function of mana just doesn't matter.
Fluctuator was banned in Standard in March 1999. Never came back. There was some sort of Fluctuator combo deck. I don't know what it was, but
yeah, I think there was some card that paid you off for the number of creatures in your graveyard, but I don't even remember. was banned so fast that I never saw it in action.
Here's another card that we've not mentioned yet on the show. Goblin Lackey.
Okay.
It's just in here. Was banned. This is Red's version of Academy. Was banned and extended in September 2003. But got to have a standard lifespan and everything else. And extended is long gone now, obviously. Gaia's Cradle and Sarah's Sanctum were banned in Urza's Block Constructed in June 1998. And then Time Spiral was banned in Standard. Gaia's Cradle and Sarah's Sanctum, it looks like they were banned in June 1999, actually. My numbers are wrong because the set came out in October of 1998. So, fixed. Now, Time Spiral, banned in Standard, Urza's Block Constructed Legacy, and restricted in Vintage in March 1999. It was banned in Legacy in June 1999. It did get unrestricted in Vintage in September 2008 and unbanned in Legacy in December 2010. I really want to know, so I've already mentioned this with like Academy. It's just like, how did this one get through the door? What were the playtest games with Time Spiral like? How did those go? Where they're just like, perfect.
Well, they're already talking about in the guide. Well, if you have all these ridiculous cards, you might be able to cast Child of Gaia. There's already this framework of like 6 mana. Who cares? There has to be a level of just hand waving, conscious or not, of anything expensive we don't really have to worry about.
I didn't think about it. I could read the guide description of Time Spiral. So let's take a look-ski here. Time Spiral. This is perhaps the most important card in the set. A free time twister. You'll need 6 mana to cast Time Spiral, but if it doesn't get countered, you can untap up to 6 lands. Therefore, you benefit from the new cards before your opponent does. Use Time Spiral when you are low on cards or need to recycle important cards from your graveyard back in your library. In a control deck, you can cast Time Spiral to find more counter magic and still be able to use them against your opponent during his or her turn. Don't trade this one away without a fight. They told you not to trade it.
Yeah. If it's all the same to you, I'm just going to go play another game.
This is the most important card in the set. Isn't it a wild thing to say? In the official guide to Urza Saga. Voltaic Key was banned in Urza's Block Constructed in June 1999, banned in Legacy, and restricted in Vintage in September 1999. It was unbanned in Legacy in September 2004 and unrestricted in Vintage in 2007. Probably most notably in like Volt Key decks for newer players out there, which is Time Vault and Voltaic Key, though they use that new one.
Manifold Key.
Yeah, Manifold Key or whatever it's called. So,
fun design. Just, you got to draw a line somewhere.
Too powerful back in the day, probably.
It's really good with Grim Monolith.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about some of this stuff. It's pretty straightforward.
Well, I don't want to say I saved the best one for last because technically not true, but Yawgmoth's Will, banned and extended in Vintage and restricted in Vintage in September 1999. So it looks like banned and extended and then restricted in Vintage in September 1999. There we go. It is funny that card is not being talked about much in this episode because it's absurd. Yeah. But the other things are way better.
Well, the Will got played a lot too.
Yeah.
The window you could play Memory Jar, Yawgmoth's bargain decks coming down the line here in a few sets.
Yep.
So it wasn't nothing. It was just maybe the second most powerful way to make 20 mana on turn 2.
Also Dark Rituals in the set.
Well, that's mandatory. It's also in Tempest and it's also in Mercadian Masks.
That's true. Yeah,
mandatory.
Good call.
That's where the file starts. That and the cycle of circle protections.
Yeah. Let's talk about notable cards. I got a bunch of cards listed from every color. We're going to spend varying lengths of time on each one. Glorious Anthem we already talked about. Cool.
Fun design. Straightforward. Awesome.
I top aided a Pro Tour Glorious Anthem. Yeah, I like Glorious Anthem.
That's a really fun design. What's next?
Sarah Avatar.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome design.
Yeah. Really cool card.
Really cool.
Next.
It's got to be Worship, right?
No, I got Waylay, which we talked about.
Okay. Just and rules issue.
Yeah, and then Worship.
Not fun.
No. Good card, too. Really good card, but definitely not fun.
I mean, in some ways, you can sort of give it a pass for the standards of the time. It's like having a creature and 4 mana, and then your opponent even cares about your life total.
Yeah.
Is a lot of moving parts. Not a design you should do, though.
So when I was doing my research for this set and I was going through notable cards, this was the thing that stood out to me the most. Like nowadays, Magic, I think, is mostly balanced color-wise. And they do a pretty good job of it. But back in the day, everyone talked about how much better blue was and everything else. And that would kind of leak into like, I think like definitely the 2000s, the idea that blue was better than anything else. And then like a little bit in the 2010s, but then like, you know, green started being really good with like Tireless Tracker and Corsair Crewfix and everything. And then we kind of got balanced, right? I have 4 white cards on here and I think I have like 13 blue cards.
Yeah. I mean, this era is blue's the best by a mile.
Yeah.
Then black.
Yep.
Then several miles behind that is red.
Yep.
And then in some other galaxy is green and white.
Yes. Totally true.
Yeah.
So blue cards start with Attunement.
I really don't know why you would want to do this. Really struggling to. It's very weird to take the recurring nightmare thing.
Okay.
But at least that is bound by having a creature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then not only do it with no restriction, but do it with something that feeds the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this on purpose?
It's an early replenish plant.
Why is this not just a spell you can cast once?
I wanted to make sure this is. Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember if it was draw 2, discard 3 or draw 3, discard 4.
No,
it's draw so many and discard so many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is a card at a history, recurring nightmare, replenish, just whatever. I don't even know what the point of this is.
Next up, super fun card, Back to Basics.
Cool. Nothing to see here.
Card that's only going to get mentioned in this part of the episode, Energy Field.
Ooh, that card also was pretty messed up at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were ways you could, I think it was, if you could, like Leyline of the Void yourself, it was a lock.
That's correct.
And it was also just a lot of time against some decks.
Yep. So that was kind of a cool card. Next up, I have Exhaustion, which was good in like the Ebony Out, like the Howling Mind decks.
Yeah.
Weird decks like that.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you want to.
Don't mind that. That's okay.
It's like Time Walk-ish, but not really. Gilded Drake.
Yeah. I appreciate to some extent how the card is supposed to be balanced, which is, well, if your opponent's doing something than a 3/3 flyer for 2 on turn 2, that's probably someone who's worth pushing back against.
Sure.
The issue is just how good this is when you can bounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where it breaks down.
Great Whale we've already talked about, especially with rules having to be changed around those cards. Hibernation, Ultimate Green Hater, still actually like kind of sees fringe play in various older formats. I know that we've played the video with Mark Rosewater about Morphling, but people who are new to Magic will look at Morphling and just go like, that's nothing.
Damage on the stack, very different.
Yeah.
Quality of creatures in general, very different.
Yep.
Weird to do this in the same set as Zephyr. There's 2 rares and one is
Zephid.
Zephid, sorry. Yeah. 2 rares. One is cheaper and does a million things, and one is more expensive and does one of the things the other one does.
That's correct. I never got to experience Morphling just being the ultimate badass that no one could beat.
I was there for that. That was my first Pro Tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would have liked to be around for that. And then naturally I got trapped because once Morphling happened and they came out with like Thornling, whatever the red one was, Torchling. They did a white one too.
It was a joke in our F&M scene too with Morphling.
Yeah.
Just like, you want to know how you beat like a new player or someone who was lapsed or whatever?
Oh.
Go get yourself a Korean Morphling.
Okay.
That thing can do anything that you want it to do.
Come on.
Yeah.
Rewind, we've talked about.
Make it up.
Show and Tell, you've briefly mentioned. Just a messed up card.
Just another, like, why have mana as a balancing mechanism in our game.
Stroke of Genius, we've talked about. Time Spiral, we've talked about. Tolarian Winds, we've not talked about. This was like the ultimate dredge enabler at the beginning before your Faithless Lootings and other cards like that started to show up. So T-Winds was like the way that initial dredge, thinking of like Jerry Thompson, Mike Crum, they would just go nuts with that card. Turnabout.
Okay.
Haven't mentioned that yet. Combo enabler in high tide decks and can be a time walk and stuff like that. Can be a mana short, and then Windfall, which we've talked about. So we're gonna move on to black. Contamination.
Great design. Really good stuff here.
Just their way of saying you don't get to play the game.
Really? I mean, in theory, it's sort of it's supposed to be bound by the fact that you can't do it forever, but that's not really true. Even in low power settings, that plus Breeding Pit is a lock.
Game.
And then when Nether Spirit comes down the line in a year, now you really got something going.
Corrupt.
Cool design.
That card's just totally fine.
Yeah. Really fun and evocative.
Yeah. I like the artwork too.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, a soon-to-be award-winning Duress.
Great design.
Yeah. Good job.
Someone posted this in the question a few months ago, and I don't know the answer, but it was setting aside basic lands, what card has been played the most at Pro Tours? What individual design? And it's like, I think the answer could be Duress because it's very powerful and has been along for a long time and is frequently legal.
Yeah. So that's a good point.
Probably Duress.
Yeah. You'll note that Duress, DU, there's a card that comes before it that I didn't list because I was overlooked it when I was going through the Scryfall list. It's a DA for Dark Ritual.
Doesn't even count.
Yeah, just in the set.
That's like a rule of law.
Unbelievable. Exhume.
Really weird design to make this good. Weird interactions in the rules because it doesn't target.
Yep.
Is really unsatisfying in the normal case where you're just playing with some cards.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, it's just kind of
it's quite the common,
but it is
common.
Really powerful. Ill-gotten gains, which was like a storm enabler sort of.
Yes,
just kind of a random card that's just like hanging out here, which it reads weird, so it's hard for players to probably wrap their head around. But once you figure out how to do it, it's like, oh yeah, you're just dead now.
Yeah, I think this design would be very cool in a set that didn't have 30 different ill-gotten gains, all of which are 10 times better.
That's true.
If that was like the combo card for a set, that or one of two or whatever, awesome. That's a thing to think about.
Yep.
Comes up weird ways or whatever. It's just, drowned out by the other stuff.
Persecute. That's fun.
Really good stuff. Again, go with Dark Ritual. I don't know.
Pestilence we've already talked about. I put down on my list here Sleeper Agent. Just because it's a weird design.
Cool design. It's a cool design.
It's actually cool.
Something with some personality.
Yeah, which this set kind of lacks a little bit. And then, of course, Yawgmoth's Will is the final black card. So we're going to move on to red here. Now, we haven't had the opportunity to talk about a lot of red cards. So I'm going to start with Brand, which is this weird card that I never could wrap my head around as a kid of why anyone would want to play it. Which is, it's single red, instant, gain control of all permanents you own, and then it cycles. So, it's good against like Gilded Drake and other stuff, I guess.
Yeah, there's a purpose, and I guess it's kind of a fine cycling design because it's so narrow, but it is a really disappointing rare.
It is a weird card because it says you own. Right. And if you're like newish to the game, or you don't have to be new necessarily, but if you're not like a tournament player or something, you own is really nebulous on what it actually means. So it's probably more confusing than they expected it to be.
Yeah.
Crater Hellion.
Cool.
You can't sit with us.
Can't sit with us. Yeah, I got kicked out of a kitchen table level game my 1 year at Seton Hall because I capsized with buyback my own Crater Hellion in a deck that I was loaned.
They said he couldn't play with them anymore, which
you can't sit with us.
That's fair. Fault Line, which was an instant speed earthquake, which I just thought was the coolest card.
This is another really good design here.
Yeah.
This is actually much weaker than Earthquake because most of the way rate in Earthquake is just fireballing and then hitting with fires or whatever.
Yep.
But you could imagine it being really sweet at instant speed. Great design.
Gamble is up next. Fantastic design. Everything about Gamble I love. Card name, sorcery speed, effect, artwork, all of it. Rules.
Awesome.
Rules. I got this one here just for you. Goblin Cadets.
I won a lot of tournaments with these, believe it or not.
I would argue you may be the person who's dealt the most damage with Goblin Cadets lifetime.
Certainly possible.
Yeah. Looks bad on paper, is bad, but in the right metagame.
No one has creatures, so who cares?
That's correct. Goblin Lackey, busted. Goblin Matron, busted alongside Goblin Lackey. But there wasn't really a great payoff back in the day. It wasn't until, is it Onslaught, Siege Gang, a Scourge?
Onslaught is where it kind of begins.
Yeah.
There's another Big O in Urza's Destiny that it's like plausible to do a lackey thing with.
Okay.
But you really have to wait until Onslaught for it to cook.
Yeah, and then it did cook then, that's for sure. Lightning Dragon, we've mentioned the pre-release card, awesome artwork. Meltdown still sees play in older formats, which is crazy to me.
Yep.
It was in your blue-red Delver deck that you lent me.
It's good against the stuff that it looks like it would be good against.
That's for sure.
And it had a real, to the extent that anyone was able to interact, Meltdown was one of the better ways to fight the Academy stuff. Raise, single red at the time. I like the wording of this. At the time you play Raise, sacrifice a land and then destroy target land. This was my jam. This is how much I love Magic. Back in the day of when I got back into Magic, so we're Urza Legacy, Urza's Destiny around that time.
Okay.
First deck that I built, like an FNM level deck that I started winning with, was a mono red land destruction deck with Smokestack.
Oh yeah.
My friend Anand built a red land destruction deck, splashing black for Dark Ritual and Yawgmoth's Will, and played Raise as like a thing to do with Yawgmoth's Will.
Okay.
And after FNM or whatever, we would go to Dunkin' Donuts and play that matchup for like 4 hours at a time. Just, have you ever been that down bad?
Yes.
That you would just, the games would come down to decking sometimes. It was so awful, but we just had so much fun playing Magic.
No, what it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was an absolute blast. Next up, I have a sneak attack just in here.
Yeah, don't need mana.
Completely busted
game
card.
doesn't need that.
And then Wildfire also just in this set too. Green cards up next. This is a little bit underwhelming, but we the aforementioned Albino Troll, which was like a super cool card. You mentioned Argothian Enchantress earlier in the show, which is just in here and is a busted card for Enchantress.
Yep.
Argothian Worm, I love you, even though you weren't good. Carpet of Flowers, busted card against blue. Cradle Guard, we love. Mutual love for Cradle Guard. Endless Worm, you remember this one?
I'm sure once I start seeing it, I'll be refreshed. Oh yeah.
5 mana 9/9.
Mm-hmm.
You just sacrifice an enchantment or sacrifice Endless Worm every upkeep. But 5 mana 9/9 back in the day, pretty big ass card. Exploration is in this set. Not going to get a ton of conversation around it because so many cards are just way more powerful. And this card's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Fecundity, which was really good in Goblin decks alongside Skirk Prospector. Fertile Ground. This was like a rampant growth adjacent ramping that also did color fixing. We got Greater Good. Shout out Frank Karsten.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the World Championships where he played that deck. It was Greater Gifts was the name of that. This is just like a weird card, weird plant that doesn't seem like it's anything, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. And that's another one of, man, if that was the combo card for the set, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. But it's not.
And it's not because it's weak.
True.
It's because there's some other things going on here.
Pouncing Jaguar, not really much going on there. It is a cool card. Artwork of this card is just the best. I loved it when I was a kid. Priest of Titania, you could really ramp it up. And they just reprinted this recently, which is actually pretty cool for you elf fans out there. Then we got Vernal Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a shout out to Craig Crimples, I think, who won nationals with this.
Yes.
It's like Tooth and Nail Vernal Bloom deck.
Mm-hmm.
And also Skull Clamp also in there.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that you guys, once we get to that card, let me tell you.
Lavender.
And then I don't know why I have this on this list. I have a recollection of it being played. Wild Dogs? Saw some play?
Some people built mono green beatdown decks, and that was about as good as you got for 1 mana.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of the cycling one behind stuff. It was just, I would play it. I would pay it 2-1 that my opponent got sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like Goblin Cadets.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
The aggro creatures back in the day, folks. PU.
Yep.
Let's talk about artifacts real quick here. My list starts with Fluctuator, which we've talked about. Grafted Skullcap. For those of you who have ever heard of the deck Burning Bridges, which was Grafted Skullcap and Ensnaring Bridge, the opponent can't attack, and then you would burn them out. It was not very good, but I loved it when I was a kid. Lifeline. Was this a thing for you? This 5 mana artifact?
Yeah, it was very beloved in casual play.
Yep.
And had some combo applications, but not what you were supposed to be doing if you're trying to win.
You have mentioned numerous times Tinker for Mishra's Helix.
That's another just great design.
Cost 5. What's the worst that could happen?
It's just locked on turn 1.
Oh,
That's the worst thing that can happen.
Okay, fair enough.
Forgot about Mistress Helix.
Phyrexian Colossus.
Yeah, cool design. Showed up a little bit, obviously, alongside Tinker. Nice that it was super synergistic with WotC.
Yeah.
Cool card.
Phyrexian Processor.
Busted.
Yeah,
Another really good thing to tinker for.
Smokestack.
One of my first, again, my first FNM deck.
Okay.
Very heavily featured Smokestack.
We've already mentioned Voltaic Key. And then this card, just another mana. Worn Power Stone. Just
At least
more mana.
Look, I give Worn Power Stone a pass in spite of being very good in some settings.
Okay.
Because it enters the battlefield tapped.
It's true.
Doesn't work unless you play another card or you wait a turn.
That's right.
There's none of that going on here. It says here is Tolarian Academy. And the book over there confirms that was on purpose. They saw that as a good thing.
You compare it with... I can't believe they wrote that. You compare it with Moxen and Black Lotus. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I had never thought of playing with those cards in Type 1 before. Thanks for the little bit of advice.
The lands we've mentioned quite a bit here. Cradle, Phyrexian Tower, Sarah Sanctum, Tolarian Academy. The only one we haven't mentioned that I think was probably only iffy back in the day was Thron Quarry.
Beloved casual design.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was also maybe the first JSS promo.
That sounds right.
I think it was printed in foil.
I'm Googling right now. Thron Quarry promo. Let's see what happens. Okay, I got some foiling here. 1999 Match of the Gathering, Thran Quarry Junior Series promo. Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you.
It's the perfect card and perfect era of the time. Because someone over at WotC was like, yeah, these stupid kids, they love their creatures. We'll give them we don't have to give them a good card. Give them the Thran Quarry.
Put some shine on it too.
Yeah.
Give them a little foil stamp. They'll go crazy. It's $35 right now.
Sure.
The one I'm looking at. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's like a little unique little keepsake.
The card's very weak, but it's a fun design. People like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the notables here in the trivia section. And that's it for the trivia section. So you guys know where we're going next. It's time to give out some awards to Tolarian Academy right after this, my friends. All right, everybody. It's time for your favorite part of the show, our favorite part of the show. It's everybody's favorite part of the show. It's the award show here for Urza Saga on the Resleevables. And we're going to start like we always do with the Oko Thief of Crowns Award. I can't even get it out. For best card of the set. What could it be?
Well, I mean, yes, there's an obvious answer, but there's also 15 cards in the set that would be the answer in basically any other set.
Patrick and I have the same answer.
Tolarian Academy.
That is correct. Moving right along. The Carnival of Souls Award for worst card in the set. Your selection's great.
So it's not actually the weakest card in the set, but I'm giving it to Shivan Gorge just because of its comparison to the other 4 in the cycle.
Excuse me, you mean the mainstay and Sly per this beautiful book?
Mandatory played. 4. Your deck list starts with 1 Shivan Gorge.
At least.
Before we talk about anything else.
I have V-Build.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know what this one does, but it is a black card and it is extremely bad. I'm getting it up on Scryfall.
Yeah, it's basically a one and done, right?
Yeah, so single black, 0/0, summon horror. V-Build comes into play with 1+1/+1 counter on it. During your upkeep, you may put a +1/+1 counter on V-Build. And then when V-Build attacks or blocks, destroy it at the end of combat.
It's not good.
I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
Just sitting here.
Just waiting.
When am I going to come in?
Yeah.
When am I going to come in? Not on turn 2. That's for sure. Yep, it's coming. It's coming. Next up is the Doomblade Award for best non-rare in the set. My answer was Duress, which, as we mentioned earlier in the show, has seen maybe the most Pro Tour level play that's not a land. However, I had not considered this answer.
Well, I think Cedric's answer is better in terms of the spirit of the award. Think of something very workmanlike and simple. Mm-hmm. But Windfall happens to be an uncommon, so we'll give it to Windfall.
Yeah, Windfall is the correct answer there, so kudos to you. Cool card. Boro Palace in the Clouds Award for fun of one of in the set. My answer is Yawgmoth's Will. It is restricted, among other things, so that is why I chose it. I like your answer, though.
I forget what it was.
Phyrexian Colossus.
Oh, yeah. That is a fun card. Yeah, you take her for it, or some decks, if you have enough mana lying around, you just play with it.
Yeah.
Fun.
Good card. Mystic Confluence Award for best vintage cube card in the set. You selected.
Guys, Cradle?
Yes.
I think Tolarian Academy is also a fine answer. I find Cradle to be slightly more open-ended as a pick one, pack one, but Academy is obviously gross also.
So my pick is Tolarian Academy. I think the only correct selections are the lands that generate a shit ton of mana, but I actually think your choice is better because green is better at finding that card than blue is at finding their card.
Yeah, and then also just the floor on Gaia's Cradle, if your draft goes badly, can only be so bad.
Yeah.
Whereas Academy can end up in your sideboard sometimes.
Absolutely can.
Yeah.
Absolutely can. So I like your answer there. Smothering Tide Award for best commander card in the set. Your answer.
Gaia's Cradle.
That's correct.
It's actually fun.
It is actually fun.
It's fun.
Like working towards making Cradle good is actually fun gameplay.
It's just at the end of the line, it's usually like a Crater Hoof or Finale or whatever.
Yeah, just like a ton of mana.
Yeah, no, but the build up is sweet.
My answer was Windfall, which is legal in Commander. I did a quick check, and EDH Rec said that it's a very heavily played card, so that'll be my selection. So I had Windfall win an award too. Good job by me. Pack Rat Award for best limited card in the set. I chose Pestilence because it's a common.
And really good.
It's not a thing that should happen. So if you've never played against a Pestilence before, just know it's a lot, especially when your opponent can have like 4 of them. But I don't know how many you're supposed to actually play. I digress. Your answer.
Phyrexian Processor.
Yes.
I think Cedric's answer is like best common in the set and an outlandish card to be a common.
Yeah.
In terms of what was just the flat out best card in like what could you hope to open in your sealed deck? Pretty sure it was Processor.
Yeah, I've heard stories about Processor, like, you play it for 7 and then that's the only thing you do for the rest of the game.
The creatures at this era, maybe you're getting a sense of it. And if you stay for the visual spoiler, you'll get to look through. The creatures are so putrid.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine, and nowadays it's like, okay, Processor. Well, it's pretty expensive and laborious. If my opponent has a Banishing Light, it's really bad. Even if they just have some 3/3 flyers, I could get raced here. Back here, it was like a 2/2 flyer for 4. You were in heaven.
Yeah, you're crushing it.
There's no racing this, and it wasn't easy to blow up.
And also, it's in the spirit of the award. Pack Rat Award.
Yeah.
You only activate Pack Rat.
Yeah.
You only activate Processor. So the Circle Protection Award for best hoser in the set. I went with Absolute Law, which gives all your knuckleheads pro red, which back in the day was kind of a real thing. You went with
Back to Basics.
another good choice.
Hoses everyone.
The
Reason not to put Shiv and Gorge in all of your decks.
That's also true.
If you need a reason.
The Shiv and Gorse thing is going to live on for a long time here on this show. The Char Rumbler Award for weirdest card in the set. I went with Brand because, again, gain control of all the stuff you own is really weird. Even if you do understand it correctly, but a lot of people, including myself when I was younger, didn't quite understand what the card was saying or what it did. And it also, why did they find the need to make that card in the first place is a weird, interesting question.
Yeah.
So that's my answer. Your answer is?
Don't remember.
Attunement.
Oh. I just keep getting reminded of these cards. It's like, there's so many designs in this set where in basically every other set I would go, this is by far my most hated design in this set. It's endless.
I think one of my favorite things about Attunement, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Right? Like just, you don't see a card like this ever made anymore. And it's only printed. I want to make sure. Yeah, it's only printed in Urza Saga.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the way, they realized they just went, oh, we're not doing that again.
I'm good.
I don't know how it came to be, but like most cards nowadays, they get reprinted in something, like some weird ass supplementary product. And it's like, this card is in Urza Saga and it's in the World Championship decks in 2000. That's
Replenish.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to get to Replenish. What a messed up deck.
Mm-hmm.
Next award. Where are we going here? We are going to the Blank Award for best card name in the set. Your selection.
Arc Lightning. It's like matches the art and it's evocative for red.
Yeah.
And the card mechanically makes sense for red.
Yeah.
It's also one of, a dozen cards in the set that you could put into a nowadays set and it would just be like fine.
Yeah,
not embarrassing, not busted. Just sure.
For me, best card name in the set. I said this in one of our Crackback videos. I was going to win an award. I meant it. Gamble. Just what a cool card. For as much damage as this set did to Magic, Whoever designed Gamble, beautifully done.
Yeah.
Just beautifully done. I'm sorry. I love that card. John Avon Award for best land artwork in the set. Excuse me. My selection is Gaia's Cradle. There's actually quite a few good selections here. I know a lot of people like the Saga lands. I'm not against them. They're just not my favorites. But Gaia's Cradle is a beautiful card, and you selected
Phyrexian Tower.
Correct.
Always been a sucker for this art.
It's good art.
Yeah.
It's good art.
Really, really cool.
Aurelia's Fury Award for most overhyped card during previous season, and the Tarmogoyf Award for most underhyped card during previous season. We will not be doing here on this particular episode, as we were both, he was like on a Magic hiatus, and I was too young to actually be around for any hype seasons that were taking place. So that means, especially to one special viewer out there who watches our show, we have one thing left to do. All right, everybody, it's time to close this show down. But before we do that, we got to hear a word from my apparel store where you can get Patrick's shirt, my hoodie, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's Coalesce Apparel and Design.
You can head over to coalesceapparel.shop, the #1 store from Magic the Gathering inspired apparel, to check out their selection of shirts, hoodies, stickers, playmats, and a whole bunch more, including their brand new Devoid collection to celebrate Modern Horizons 3 and Resleevables merchandise meant for the loyalist of Jackal Pups. When checking out, be sure to use gift code Resleevables to get 10% off your entire order. Coalesce Apparel and Design, nobody made what they wanted, so they made it themselves.
Alrighty, partner. As always, you get to begin. Which card won Urza's Saga and why?
My vote goes to Gaia's Cradle.
Hey.
Because if you're just gonna do all of this for whatever reason, if you're gonna just fire every bullet in the gun, leave the game in a place where there's no possible progression in terms of the card file.
Okay.
At least make something kind of fun. This is a little bit. This is too much. But it's like, oh, you play with a bunch of creatures, then you figure out something to do with your mana. So you want some cheap creatures, and maybe some expensive ones, or maybe some cheap creatures that have some expensive activated ability or whatever. It's cool. It's fun. There's not a lot of that going on in here.
Fun-ish.
There's at least, like, you and I'm sure, both used Gaia's Cradle to upkeep the Echo on Albino Troll.
Oh, yeah.
Did anyone ever use Tolarian Academy to cast a Cathodian? No. No. If you're going to do this for no reason, at least you can make a card that's fun some of the time, at least for a little bit. And the set does so little of that. So I give it to Gaia's Cradle.
I think you picked the perfect card with Cathodian. I didn't see that coming. Just old 3-mana 3/3.
Here's tap it. Next turn, Suchi.
That's right. No one's ever done that before.
No.
My winner of the set is Tolarian Academy, and I'll tell you why. Because if you're gonna just say fuck it, then fuck it. How about that? That's what they decided. Just who gives a shit? We're just going for it. And as I said, I didn't read this before doing the script. I didn't read this actually until you read it in here. I had not known that they acknowledge. Roman Reigns acknowledged me. They acknowledge that they're just like, yeah, we said fuck it internally too. We're just making this thing. Unbelievable.
Fountain of Youth.
Yeah. Gain of life. You're nailing. I got some extra mana lying around.
Right.
How dare they put Fountain Youth alongside Black Lotus and Moxen? Who are you trying to fool?
No, that's actually perfect. That actually highlights the problem. The problem is it doesn't matter what artifacts you play with it.
That's true.
You could pick anything.
That's true, actually. That's true. This book is great. I'm actually looking forward to reading more.
Is it better to play with Mox Sapphire? Sure.
Yes.
Is it necessary? No.
Just anything that costs 0 will work.
Yeah, just find anything.
Any of those baubles.
You got Ornithopters, you got Shield Spheres, Phyrexian Walkers.
Good enough.
The card from the dark that you can sacrifice to prevent half the damage dealt to you. Yeah. Great.
Let's grade it out. I gave it a 7. I'm not entirely sure why I chose this.
There's a lot of iconic cards in here.
I think that's why I chose.
If you're a tournament player, this set disproportionately impacts your experience with Magic. And if you like Magic, then you will have some fondness for this set.
If you like tournament Magic.
Right.
Yeah.
Tournament Magic.
Yeah, if you like tournament Magic, you like competitive Magic, you like nonsense. Now, again, as I've mentioned multiple times in the show, I wasn't playing competitive Magic in a meaningful way during this time, so I'm not someone who has ever really activated. I've never activated Tolarian Academy in a tournament that matters. You know, I've never done that sort of thing. I've never done a lot of the things that this set promotes in any meaningful event before. I've never activated Morphling in anything that matters, right? I can appreciate what this set is insofar as you mentioned a lot of iconic cards that have colored my history with Magic and a lot of people's history with Magic in a positive or negative way, whatever. It just is what it is. But for me, I can respect, like I said with Tolarian Academy, for just like the internal team just going like, F it. We're just going to print a bunch of messed up shit and we're going to see how it goes. Now, should they have done that? No, they shouldn't have. And I know that there's a lot of sets that we've talked about leading up to this point where like Magic was like kind of teetering. Maybe the game was going to die. And we haven't gotten to the sets that follow this yet. Urza's Legacy, Urza's Destiny. And then of course, is it Mass Block after that? Yeah. So that's when the big power down happens, for lack of a better term. I could be wrong about this. Correct me if you think that I'm wrong. Like this set almost killed Magic, like this combo stuff.
Well, it was an unsustainable trajectory.
Yeah.
And that is my core critique is, so you can either grow the pie or borrow from the future.
Okay.
In terms of this set is going to sell a lot.
Yep.
Because Urza Saga is super powerful. People are going to want to buy a lot of it.
Okay.
So let's compare it to, let's say, original Innistrad. What is dope about original Innistrad? Well, the creative space is great.
That's true.
And the graveyard matter stuff synergizes with enough old cards that you kind of want to go back and look at old stuff that maybe discounted before that has a new context because there's so much self-mill and caring about card types and graveyards and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's growing it. Not only is this thing cool in its own right, it's making you care about stuff in the past that before you didn't care about.
Mm-hmm.
This is the number one example of Magic's history of borrowing from the future. Why is this set powerful or appealing? Because of the raw power of all the cards. And we like quite literally can't do better than this.
Sure. Yeah,
like
true.
The water's already boiling over.
Yep.
Like what could we possibly add to this context that would be interesting or appealing?
Yep.
It just requires a bunch of bands and then a very purposeful, when we get to Mass Block, powering down and sort of reset of what the last 4 years have looked like.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Like I said, I'm kind of into the fact that you just said, screw it, we're going to go for it. Obviously, this is not a good thing. And as you mentioned, borrowing from the future, which we'll get to at future sets. So I'm sticking with my 7. I'll probably get made fun of in the comments in the same way that I did about Unglued, and I don't care. What do you got?
I give Saga a 3.
Okay.
There are a lot of problems here.
Yeah, no kidding.
So you have cycling and the sleeping enchantments.
Okay.
And there is basically no design space mined there. Like,
okay.
I am saying this as not a fan of cycling.
Mm-hmm.
If you did cycling in a set with Delirium or Threshold, I would go, okay, at least you're trying to make it something, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing here except Fluctuator. There's not even a creature that gets a counter if you cycle a card. Like,
sure.
There's nothing.
Okay.
Right. The sleeping enchantments have the possibility of being a cool, okay, this thing changes. There's something dynamic going on. We care about card types.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's nothing of that going on. And basically all of them are on opponent opt-in. So they're not reliable, super, super unappealing.
Yep.
What I guess I like about this set is there are so many over the line cards that it actually gives Magic some appealing design space, which is, well, how do we make a fixed version of this card from Saga and tap into the player's memory that we're doing something dangerous, but fix it in a way that's actually not as busted as it appears.
Okay.
That is the sort of secret sauce that Saga gives.
Okay.
This is not a great example because this card has gotten banned too, but Underworld Breach is like, that's obviously tapping into Yawgmoth's Will.
Okay. Yep.
And if you could find a way to do that card and have it not get banned,
mm-hmm.
then you can give people the little taste of something. Past in Flames is maybe a better example.
Yes.
Of like,
yes,
that card sometimes is a little bit like Yawgmoth's Will. but your reaction to it is clearly like, oh, I remember this thing in Dark Ritual.
Yeah.
And maybe I can tap into something there.
Yeah. Okay.
That is the good thing that Saga does. The bad thing is the power level, the setting even inside the power level, the structure of the set, the core mechanics are not well executed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to the point about borrowing from the future or whatever, my core critique of Urza's Saga, or like maybe it's more appropriate to say the pushback I get to someone who's a fan of the set is you can always do this. If you are working on a trading card game, you can always just choose to do this.
Yep.
Make dozens of cards that are transparently over the line, even for the sensibilities of the time, and then just, I guess, ban some stuff or whatever.
Sure.
This is the mark. Historically, when this happens in trading card games, this is our last set. So let's just fire off everything. Who cares?
Okay.
This is not the last set. It's such a failure of due diligence to just say we don't care about balancing or play patterns or anything anymore. And it's not because of one or two designs in the set, but because of dozens of them. It's a conscious choice.
Yeah.
And it's like, who wants to work on the next set after you do something like this? Because all you're going to do is be cleaning up messes or making cards that people aren't going to play with.
Or
banning something before the set comes out.
Or making cards that are even more powerful. I mean, they kind of did that.
There are a few.
Yeah.
I think Legacy is a step in a very good direction.
Okay.
But only because this is so bad.
Okay. So, yeah, like my score of a 7 is weird after hearing what you have to say. But again, I just think I can enjoy it for what it is.
Sure, yeah. If you're just approaching it as like, I'm a long-time Magic player. I played in tournaments a bunch. I play Vintage Cube when I feel like unwinding a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just see these cards all the time, and they're part of my core experience.
Yeah. I
I don't begrudge anyone who feels that way. And in fact, you go back to 2008, I would be described the exact same way.
Sure.
It's like I play tournament Magic. I've played with and against these cards constantly, and they're pretty simple, straightforward, and busted.
Yep.
But that is just not. That's not a sustainable model.
mean, it's not a good thing.
The things that the best sets, in my opinion, for Magic are, talk about this. Go back to Arabian Nights.
Okay.
Two big changes in Arabian Nights from Alpha. One is just there's a plethora of creatures that are just much higher on rate. You can argue about whether or not all of them should be sort of drawback oriented, but compared to the selection in Alpha, it's like, oh, there's a lot of 3 and 4 and 5 mana creatures that I'm like excited to put in my deck.
Yeah, sure.
That's really good.
Yep.
Also, the execution on the lands. We go from Alpha, where it's just basic lands and dual lands. We then move to Arabian Nights, where the lands are, some of them have activated abilities. Some don't tap for mana. Some tap for colorless. One of them taps for all 5.
Okay.
What a jump forward from one set to the next. So that even if at the end of the day you go, well, we really shouldn't do Bazaar of Baghdad, or we shouldn't make all the best creatures these drawbacky Juzam and Serendib type of things.
Okay.
You can look at those two things and say, that's correct. And we can iterate on that. We can improve on that for next time.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through all of Magic sets, even the ones that have some flaws, and you can pull apart. That was a good thing that was going on there. We can like iterate on that. Saga barely has anything. Most of it you just have to just throw in the trash can because it's just, you can't balance the game around these cards.
Yep.
And to the extent that there's anything to learn from them, it's because of that fact that sometimes you try to make designs that resemble them because you get cheap heat from players who remember the Saga versions.
That's all really good point.
So yeah, I grade it. And honestly, I think 3 is being generous, and I'm probably just giving it some leeway because of the experience you're describing. I play in tournament Magic and I know these cards.
I do think 3 is being generous based off of how you're grading the set.
Yeah.
I do think it is being a little generous. Let's wind her down here, everybody. Let's talk about where you can watch this show, or at least where you probably watch this show, which is youtube.com/theresleevables. So thanks for hanging out with us. You can subscribe there, like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, all those things that one does on the YouTube page. You can find on our YouTube page our most recent episodes of The Resleevables, in which we've reviewed Portal Second Age Unglued, and now the first step in the old Saga block. You can find our most recent episodes of the Resleevables Tournament Edition with more of those to come. So we're very excited about bringing you more gameplay videos here in the near future. You can find snippets of our Unsleeved podcast, which we'll be talking more about when we get to our Patreon. And then you can watch our Crack a Pack videos, which we've already said that we've got our packs here. I grabbed the wrong one, so I don't care. Because I've got the Urza Legacies and Urza
we're already queued up.
Yeah, so we've been queued up on those for a while. There's a Saga pack somewhere in here, probably in this book, who knows? But we'll be doing a Crack pack. Someone's going to win one of these Urza Saga packs, of course. Patreon, let's talk about that. Patreon.com/Resleevables, where you get early access and early releases of both the Resleevables and the Resleevables Tournament Edition. So if you're watching this episode on there, awesome. Thanks for being a Jackal Pup. Access to our unsleeved podcast, which is our unfiltered once a week, sometimes twice a week podcast, where recently we've just been talking about lots of fun stuff.
It has not been slow.
No.
Over in podcast land.
That's right. So if you want to hear us talk about just complete nonsense like my dating life and God knows what else, then feel free to be a patron, find the tier that works for you, and you can listen to that stuff. And then of course you get early access to our Crack a Pack videos, but also the ability to win the other pack.
Yeah, you might have a question. Well, talking about these pack drawings, how would I go about getting entered to possibly win one? And I am here to answer that rhetorical question. If you head over to patreon.com/Resleevables, you can find a variety of tiers to subscribe at, and they come with the benefits that Cedric mentioned on top of, stickers and playmats and different rewards at different tiers. If you subscribe at the $10 or $25 tiers, one of the benefits is you are automatically drawn in our Crack a Pack raffles. We open one and make a video out of it, Cedric mentioned before, and the other one gets sent out to one lucky Patreon at the $10 or $25 levels. This doesn't require any notification or emailing or telling that you want to be entered. It's just automatically part of the process at being at those tiers. So if you're interested in getting drawn into a potential Saga block pack or Portal 3 Kingdoms coming up sometime in the not too distant future, head over to patreon.com/Resleevables and check out the $10 or $25 tiers.
You can also follow us on Twitter if you're one of those folks, which I am. I love myself some good old Twitter, at the Resleevables on there, where we post funny things from the show and just some funny things in general. You can also keep up when new episodes come out. So that's a way to notify you about that. Sponsors, let's talk about them. Tales of Adventure, Eternal lives over there. You can use promo code Resleevables to get 5% off your order at checkout. Coalesce Apparel and Design, that's my apparel store where you can get this Resleevable hoodie. You can get that Resleevable shirt and a bunch of other Magic-inspired apparel. Use promo code Resleevables to get 5% off your order. It's 5% now, not 10. You can yell at me on Twitter about it if you want. I don't care.
Was it just too successful? Just had to turn it down a little bit?
I had to turn it off a little bit.
Yeah.
Just cooking a little bit too much. So
yeah,
that's all right. And then Bosch and Roll. You can go and watch his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bosch and Roll. That's Brian Colville, everybody, who wins Black Lotuses and CDH tournaments in his spare time. And also plays a lot of Vintage Cube and a lot of Vintage in general. You can watch Eternal every single weekday over on his fantastic channel. So what's next? Well, Resleevables Tournament Edition, new episodes are going to be coming out of that soon. We're doing a lot of research of the 1996 and then front end of 1997 Pro Tours. It's kind of hard to find. That's why it's been taking a little while. But we're working on that. And then more importantly, the Resleevables is headed to Urza's Legacy, where we get Grim Monolith. We get Tinker. What else do we get?
Jar.
Oh, right. Memory Jar. You know what card I was going to say? Simian Grunts. Yeah. You're like, what do you get? Simian Grunts. Memory Jar. One of those is better than the other. Tell you that much. They're good land that's in their land.
Oh no, that's the cycle of creature lands.
Yeah. Forbidden Watchtower. Okay, hang on. Here we go. Forbidden Watchtower.
Mm-hmm.
Fairy Conclave.
Yep.
Spawning Pool.
Mm-hmm.
What red's next? Guillotine Encampment.
No. Yeah, I said duh.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, dude. Treetop Village.
Yeah.
What a cycle.
Yeah.
First creature lands in Magic history. Well, Mishra's Factory.
But, right, but enters the battlefield tap for a color.
Dope cycle.
Like, that cycle alone means it's a better set than Urza Saga. There's nothing in Urza Saga as good as those 5 cards.
No, that's legit.
Yeah,
that's legit.
There's other fun cards too.
Yeah.
I have a soft spot for Legacy, even though there's some overshoots.
There's some messed up stuff.
Ranged Hermit.
Good card.
Fun card. Fun echo design.
True. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff going on there. So that'll be the next set. We hope you enjoyed this long look at Urza's Saga. What a set it was. What an impact it's had on Magic's history. Urza's Legacy was also impactful, but you could argue that nothing has been as impactful as Saga was, especially during this time. But we are done for now. We are going to see you next time. So for Patrick Sullivan, I'm Cedric Phillips. Thank you for watching this episode of the Resleevables, and we'll see you back here for the Hammer, Urza's Legacy.
Test.
Damn it!
What? That's why we test.
Rawr. All right, I'm good.
Test.
All right, Tales of Adventure. Our boys. Here it comes. All right, everybody, we are here for the facts of Urza's Saga. But before we do begin going over one of the strongest Magic sets of all time, we got to go start this over because I hated that. Not a one-take guy today. All right, here we go.
you.